Chapter 436. Seeing Chu Tianqing's appearance, Ji Tianqing's heart was filled with sadness. He couldn't imagine how serious his master's injuries were. How could it make a Sky Origin stage cultivator so miserable? Ji Tianqing quickly walked to Chu Tianqing and said in a low voice, "Master, disciple is back." Chu Tianqing raised his head, a touch of relief in his eyes. He nodded and said in a low voice, "It's good that you're back." Ji Tianqing looked at him and saw his back was stained with blood. He quickly asked, "Master, how are your injuries? Why are they so serious?" Chu Tianqing's face was pale. He said in a low voice, "That demon is a general under the Blood Demon King. He has the innate ability of Demon Shadow 100 transformation. He took advantage of my unpreparedness and injected a rebellious bone that the Blood Demon King had nurtured for 100 years into my body. The rebellious bone of the Blood Demon King is very insidious and vicious. It's stronger than an ordinary Sky Origin stage weapon." Ji Tianqing frowned, his heart heavy and worried. "Master, you'd better go into seclusion to heal as soon as possible. Disciple believes that with the strength of our sect and the help of the elders, you'll be able to heal your injuries." Chu Tianqing shook his head and said in a serious tone, "Tianqing, I know how serious my injuries are. You don't have to worry. I'm just seriously injured. I won't die. However, the rebellious bone of the Blood Demon King contains 100 years' worth of demon qi. I'll have to go into seclusion for at least half a year to suppress my injuries. If you want to fully recover, I'm afraid it'll be difficult to complete it without 8 to 10 years. Chu Tianqing's tone became heavier and heavier. He continued, "The demon race's movements are so frequent. They'll definitely make a big move. If I go into seclusion to heal, when the demon race invades, there will be no one to preside over the situation. Our sect's situation will be very dangerous. Therefore, I have to wait for you to come back. I have something to tell you face to face." Ji Tianqing understood the urgency of the situation and hurriedly said, "Please instruct me, Shizuan." Chu Tian looked at him and said in a serious tone, "Tianqing, before I was assassinated, I used the fated star chart to peer into the heavens and divine the future. Master has predicted that our sect will soon encounter a great calamity that has not been seen in hundreds of years. I'm afraid we will fall into an irrecoverable situation. Master isn't afraid of calamities and tribulations, nor is he afraid of death. What I'm afraid of is that the 1,000-year foundation of the Sky Pillar sect will be destroyed in my generation. Even if I die, I won't have the face to face the ancestors. You should understand the current situation. Not only is the Tianjian sect eyeing our sect covetously, but the Blood Demon King is also ready to make a move. After I go into seclusion to heal my wounds, the Great Elder is the only Heaven Origin stage cultivator left in the sect. I'm afraid he won't be able to save the sect on his own." Ji Tianqing vaguely understood Chu Tiantian's meaning. He cupped his hands in salute and said with a serious expression, "Shizuan, please rest assured. This disciple will live and die with the Sky Pillar sect. Together with the sect's elders and deacons, we will resist the invasion of the Tianjian sect and the demon race to the death." Chu Tian nodded slightly and squeezed out a smile on his pale face. "Tianqing, I'm deeply gratified that you can understand Master's meaning and accept his orders in the face of danger. Master believes in your willpower and determination, but, with your current strength, you won't be able to turn the tide. You won't be able to protect the sect's 1,000-year foundation. At this moment of life and death, Master has decided to bestow the sect's most sacred treasure to you. After you inherit the treasure, you will be able to reach the Heaven Origin stage in the shortest time possible." Ji Tianqing didn't feel much excitement in his heart. He only felt a little puzzled and incredulous. What kind of treasure could allow him to reach the Heaven Origin stage so quickly? Chu Tian took out a simple and mysterious dark golden treasure box from his interspatial ring. He held the dark golden treasure box with both hands and said with a solemn expression, "The sect's most sacred treasure is the heavenly feather orb left behind by our sect's founder after he passed away. 1,000 years ago, our sect's founder, Sky Pillar spiritual master, witnessed with his own eyes the scene of Kenshin killing a peerless demon with a single sword strike. After that, Sky Pillar Spiritual Master was fortunate enough to receive Kenshin's guidance and understand the mysteries of martial arts. Finally, he reached the limit of the Heaven Origin stage. Sky Pillar Spiritual Master used his great ability to move 9 mountains and formed a spirit vein on the great formation that sealed the Demon Emperor. He established the Sky Pillar sect and passed it down to this day. Unfortunately, the Heaven Origin stage is the limit of martial artists and also the biggest shackle of martial arts. Even someone as powerful as Sky Pillar Spiritual Master couldn't surpass the limit of a celestial being. He couldn't break through the Heaven Origin stage and reach the legendary higher realm. 800 years ago, Sky Pillar Spiritual Master's lifespan was exhausted and his soul returned to heaven and earth. Before he returned to heaven, he condensed the 400 years of cultivation that he refined into this heavenly feather orb and passed it down. According to our sect's ancestral teachings, when our sect encounters a great calamity of life and death, the current sect master can weigh the pros and cons and bestow the heavenly feather orb upon an elite with exceptional talent. Speaking up to here, Chu Tianxing used his true essence to open the sealing array on the dark golden box. With a solemn expression on his face, he took out a dark golden pearl that was flickering with light from the treasure box. This orb was the size of a pigeon's egg and was dark golden all over. It was as clear and flawless as glass from the inside out. Even after 800 years, this heavenly feather orb still exuded a sacred and noble aura as it fluctuated with a vast and mighty true essence aura. Chu Tianxing looked at Ji Tianxing with a solemn expression and said, "Tianxing, our sect's founder, Sky Pillar Spiritual Master, was able to reach the limit of the Heaven Origin stage and establish the Sky Pillar sect. This has a great relationship and origin with Kenshin. And you have the bloodline of Kenshin. It is very likely that you are a descendant of Kenshin. Today, Master will bestow the heavenly feather orb to you as repayment for Kenshin's guidance to our sect's founder back then. Presumably, if our sect's founder's spirit is in heaven, he will agree with my decision." Then, Chu Tianxing looked at Ji Tianxing with a burning gaze and shouted, "Tianxing, hold your breath and concentrate. Hold your origin and clear your mind." Ji Tianxing immediately closed his eyes and focused his mind to keep his mind clear. In the next moment, multicolored light surged in Chu Tianxing's palms as he held the heavenly feather orb and slowly inserted it into Ji Tianxing's forehead. Whoosh! The heavenly feather orb that was as clear as glass drilled into Ji Tianxing's forehead and fell into his mind. Immediately, the heavenly feather orb emitted a trace of extremely pure and majestic true yuan that flowed into his body and meridians. Ji Tianxing's body was covered in a layer of faint golden light, and his temperament became sacred and noble. After doing all this, Chu Tianxing seemed to have exhausted all his strength. A trace of relief appeared on his pale face. Tianxing. The heavenly feather orb contains 400 years of our sect's founder's cultivation. It is the lifetime cultivation of a Heaven Origin stage powerhouse. With your current strength, you can't withstand the 400 years worth of cultivation. It is impossible for you to refine it quickly. From now on, you must cultivate day and night to gradually absorb the power in the heavenly feather orb. Only then can you quickly reach the Heaven Origin stage. Looking for a reward. Chapter 437. The energy within the heavenly levitation orb was truly too powerful and overbearing. Chu Tian was worried that Ji Tianxing would be unable to endure such a powerful energy, so he had no choice but to solemnly warn him. Daoist Master Qing Tian was a 9th-level Heavenly Origin stage expert, and was only a step away from the Heavenly Origin stage. The energy he bitterly cultivated for 400 years was terrifyingly powerful, and once it was released, it would surely destroy the heavens and the earth. Even Chu Tian himself was unable to completely refine the energy within the heavenly levitation orb in a short period of time. Ji Tianxing was only at the 5th level of the Origin core stage, and it was even more impossible for him to endure the terrifying 400 years of energy. He could only bitterly cultivate day and night, and spend at least a year's time to be able to imperceptibly refine and absorb the energy within the heavenly levitation orb. This was the result of Chu Tiantian's estimation. As far as he was concerned, if Ji Tianxing was able to refine the heavenly levitation orb within a year and attain the strength of the heavenly origin stage, then he would be completely at ease. Tianqing, you fused with the ancestors' heavenly levitation orb. Quickly go into closed-door cultivation and increase your strength as soon as possible. Master is also going into closed-door cultivation to recuperate. During Master's closed-door cultivation, you'll temporarily take over the position of sect master and preside over the sect. The Supreme Elder will assist you, and all the elders and deacons will follow your orders. Master believes that even if the Tianjian sect and the devil race invade our sect in the near future, you'll still be able to turn the tide and protect our sect's 1,000 years of foundation. Chu Tiantian's gaze burned as he looked at Ji Tianqing, and his tone was solemn and low, as if he was making arrangements for his death. Ji Tianqing's expression was firm as he clasped his hands and bowed with a sonorous voice. Master, don't worry. Disciple will absolutely not disappoint you. Yes, Master can be at ease if that's the case. Chu Tian lightly nodded and waved his hand to signal Ji Tianqing to withdraw and increase his strength as soon as possible. After Ji Tianqing bid his farewell, he left Crimson Sky Peak and entered the depths of the Sky Pillar Sect's Immortal Peak. Within the Immortal Peak was the Sky Pillar Sect's most confidential forbidden area, the Immortal Cave. That place was exceptionally deserted and its defenses were extremely tight. Even if it had 3 to 5 years, no one would go there. Chu Tiansheng was recovering in seclusion within the Immortal Cave. No one would disturb him. After Ji Tianqing returned to the Tianqing courtyard, he gave some instructions to his maid, Xiao Shuang, before entering a secret chamber to cultivate in seclusion. He activated the cultivation formation in the secret room and sat cross-legged in the middle of the formation, adjusting his mind and entering a state of emptiness. He had made all the preparations, preparing to refine the power within the heavenly emergence orb. However, when he started to circulate his energy and absorb the energy from the heavenly emergence orb, he discovered that the energy was far more violent and powerful than he had imagined. With his strength, it was impossible for him to withstand the impact of the violent power. The sword veins and corporeal body in his body swelled up, as though they were about to explode. Ji Tianqing's face suddenly turned as pale as a sheet of paper. Large beads of sweat appeared on his forehead, and his body began to convulse and tremble. However, after the boundless power within the heavenly feather orb was activated, it continuously surged out, wantonly attacking his sword vein, head, and body, unable to be stopped at all. His sea of consciousness was impacted by the boundless power, and his consciousness became hazy. Oh no! After all, the heavenly emergence orb contains 400 years of Venerable Qingtian's power. I still underestimated the power of the heavenly emergence orb. Ji Tianqing cursed inwardly, his heart filled with anxiety. At this critical moment, the black hole in his abdomen surged with an incomparably powerful devouring power, enveloping the heavenly emergence orb in his mind. Swoosh! The heavenly emergence orb was immediately sucked into the black hole and into Kenshin's tomb. 400 years of pure power turned into thousands of golden rays of light, like countless water pillars, and poured into the heavenly sword steel. The originally dark and cold heavenly sword steel only had a trace of spirit chi surrounding it. After devouring the heavenly emergence orb, the spirit chi surrounding the heavenly sword steel became denser and denser, and it actually emitted a 5-colored glow. Ji Tianqing also felt relieved. His body returned to normal, and his consciousness became clear. He was finally out of danger. He felt the change in the black hole and immediately guessed the reason. Was it the burial of heaven that saved me? Thinking of this, he condensed his consciousness and passed through the black hole in his dantian, entering Kenshin's tomb. Swoosh! Ji Tianqing's consciousness condensed into his appearance, turning into a translucent little person, and appeared in the dark and cold space. He flew across the sky above the wilderness, and soon arrived at the black heavenly sword steel. Of the 9 tombstones to the left of the heavenly sword steel, 6 of them had become blank. Only the last 3 tombstones were engraved with the 7th, 8th, and 9th level of the path of the sword. Ji Tianqing looked up at the heavenly sword steel, and saw the dense spirit chi surrounding the heavenly sword steel, emitting a dense 5-colored glow. Previously, when he was trapped in the soul-refining cauldron, his consciousness entered Kenshin's tomb, and saw that the heavenly sword steel was still cold and dark. But now, the heavenly sword steel had undergone such a huge change, which confirmed Ji Tianqing's conjecture. Burial of Heaven, was it you who saved me? Ji Tianqing looked up at the heavenly sword steel, and shouted with his mind. From within the heavenly sword steel, Burial of Heaven's vigorous and ancient voice immediately sounded, that's right. With your current strength, you are still unable to withstand the hundreds of years' worth of power in the heavenly levitation orb. However, I can quickly refine the power in the heavenly levitation orb, and help you increase your strength rapidly. Ji Tianqing nodded, and said with a calm expression, you can devour the power in the heavenly levitation orb, and then transfer it to me. In this way, I can increase my strength quickly, and you can recover your primordial qi faster. It's a win-win situation. Burial of Heaven's vigorous voice said solemnly, don't waste time, start cultivating as soon as possible. Okay. Ji Tianqing nodded, and his consciousness left Kenshin's tomb, and returned to his body. After that, he sat upright in the secret chamber and concentrated on cultivating. Burial of Heaven also transferred a vast amount of power, which surged out of the black hole, into his sword embryo. The sword embryo continuously fused with the power, and it grew at a speed visible to the naked eye. Ji Tianqing cultivated the 6th level of the sword heart Dao, and he tried to open up new meridians. Time silently flowed by, and the secret chamber was silent. Unknowingly, a day had passed. Ji Tianqing relied on the pure power that Burial of Heaven transferred to him to successfully open up 2 meridians, and he tempered them into sword veins. 18 sword veins were finally formed, and he'd finally completed cultivating the 6th level of the sword heart Dao. His strength had smoothly attained the 6th level of the origin core stage. Next, he started cultivating the 7th level of the sword heart Dao. The 7th level of the sword heart Dao required him to open up 36 apertures in his body. Every 12 apertures opened up, his strength would increase by 1 level. Ji Tianqing understood that the sword heart Dao was a cultivation method that helped him cultivate his fleshly body to the limit. Ordinary martial artists only had 9 meridians and 72 apertures in their bodies, and the power contained within was limited, and the might of their true essence was limited as well. Once he cultivated the 7th level of the sword heart Dao, he would possess 18 sword veins and 108 apertures. Chapter 438. 2 days passed quickly. Ji Tianqing bitterly cultivated the 7th level of the sword heart Dao in the private room, and he only used a short day to successfully open 12 apertures. His strength increased once more, and he reached the 7th level of the origin core stage. Along with the passage of time, the Burial of Heaven endlessly supplied him with strength, and he cultivated with all his strength, causing his strength to increase explosively at an extremely high speed. 3 days later, he opened 24 apertures, and his strength reached the 8th level of the origin core stage. He possessed 18 sword veins and 96 apertures, and his combat strength far surpassed martial artists of the same cultivation by a few times. From this moment onwards, no one below the Sky Origin stage was a match for him. Even if he encountered a half-step Sky Origin stage expert like Ghost Eye, he would still be able to defeat him. However, Ji Tianqing ended his 3 days of closed-door cultivation and didn't continue cultivating. In a short 3 days, his strength increased explosively by 3 levels. This was absolutely unbelievable, a miracle that shook the martial Dao world. A rapid increase in strength would surely cause the foundation of the martial Dao to be unstable. Just like a pavilion in the sky, even if it was 3 kilometers tall, it would still collapse in the end. So, after Ji Tianqing reached the 8th level of the origin core stage, he temporarily stopped cultivating and prepared to properly consolidate his foundation of the martial Dao. Right at this moment, the Burial of Heaven's voice sounded out in his mind. Ji Tianqing, I've already helped you refine the strength within the levitation pearl. In the future, when your foundation stabilizes, your strength will still increase explosively by leaps and bounds when you continue cultivating. Moreover, I've recovered 30% of my strength, and I want to give you a pleasant surprise. When he heard the Burial of Heaven's voice, Ji Tianqing was able to sense that his consciousness had formed a subtle mental connection with the Burial of Heaven. In this way, his consciousness didn't need to enter the Kenshin's tomb and was able to contact the Burial of Heaven at any time. He sent a voice transmission with his heart and asked the Burial of Heaven in his mind. What pleasant surprise! The dignified voice of the burial of heaven that was filled with the vicissitudes of life sounded out in his mind. Carefully look at your right palm. When he heard this, Ji Tianqing unconsciously lowered his head and stared at the center of his right palm. An egg-sized black hole had actually appeared out of thin air on his right palm that was sparkling and translucent like jade. Within the black hole was a bottomless vortex that was like an abyss. Staring at the black hole for a while longer would cause one's consciousness to become blurred. Ji Tianqing could clearly sense that the black hole in his palm was connected to the heaven-span sword steel in the sword god's tomb. The burial of heaven's sword of heaven's strength, the black hole of heaven's cultivation would be able to replenish the of heaven's strength. Or perhaps, the heavenly sword steel could release an attack that could destroy the heavens and extinguish the earth. Through the black hole in his palm, it could kill all the powerful enemies. A satisfied smile appeared on Ji Tianqing's face when he understood this. Of it. In this way, I can control the black hole as I wish. I have another trump card. The burial of heaven also said in a gratified tone, Ji Tianqing, we had an agreement back then. I will help you increase your strength, and you will help me recover my strength. Our fates are one. We are bound together for good or ill. Now that I have swallowed the heaven's levitation orb, my cultivation and strength have recovered to 30%, which can greatly increase your combat strength. Even if you are facing a heaven's prime expert, I can guarantee that you will not be defeated. Ji Tianqing couldn't help but frown. He asked in confusion, burial of heaven, the heaven's levitation orb contains 400 years of cultivation from Qingtian Jinren. How can it only help you recover to 30% of your strength? The burial of heaven snorted arrogantly and said, I am the soul of the divine sword. At my peak, I can shake the heavens and earth, and shatter the sun, moon, and stars. It is only a lifetime of cultivation from a heaven's prime expert. It is already a miracle that I can recover to 30% of my strength. I see. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly. He was full of expectation and yearning for the power of shaking the heavens and earth, and shattering the sun, moon, and stars. After a moment of silence, he asked again, burial of heaven, why is the heaven's prime stage called the limit of heaven's prime and the biggest shackle of martial arts? What is the stage above the heaven's prime stage? The burial of heaven said solemnly, the body and martial arts of the heaven's prime stage have both reached the limit. This is the end of martial arts. Even so, a heaven's prime stage martial artist only has a lifespan of 300 to 500 years. Once his lifespan is up, he will die. If his body is destroyed, he will die immediately. Then have you ever imagined what a martial artist should cultivate after his body has reached the limit? Why can those experts who have surpassed the heaven's prime stage have a lifespan of thousands of years? Even if his body is destroyed, he can still keep a trace of his soul. After listening to the burial of heaven's explanation, Ji Tianqing felt as if he was suddenly enlightened. The doubts and guesses that had been lingering in his heart all this time immediately vanished like smoke, and he became suddenly enlightened. In this way, the stage above the heaven's prime stage is to cultivate the soul? That's right. The burial of heaven said solemnly, however, you're only at the 8th level of the origin core stage now. You haven't even reached the heaven's prime stage. Isn't it too far-fetched to think about this? After he finished speaking, the burial of heaven didn't say anything and continued to sleep and cultivate. Ji Tianqing withdrew his right palm and concealed the black hole at the center of his palm. He started to cultivate and consolidate his martial Dao foundation. Misty Moon Mountain Range 600 miles east of Flame Spirit City. A pitch-black devil mist and a grayish-white ghost mist flew at extreme speed in the mountain range. After a short moment, 2 balls of dense fog landed outside the temporary devil cave, and 2 figures appeared. These 2 people were Blood Demon King, who was over 3 meters tall, and Granny Ghost, who was as thin as a monkey. The 2 of them stood outside the devil cave and frowned as they looked at the cave entrance that had collapsed and was filled with rubble. Their faces immediately became gloomy. Blood Demon King stared coldly at the cave entrance and said in a ghastly tone, the cave entrance has collapsed, and the defensive formation that I set up has been destroyed as well. How could this be? Could it be that there was a great battle inside the cave? Granny Ghost stretched out her dove-headed walking stick and pointed at the 10,000 feet tall mountain, and said in a cold voice, "The entire mountain has many ravines cracked open, and countless earth and boulders have collapsed. Only a Heaven's prime stage powerhouse can cause such a terrifying destructive force." Blood Demon King's brows tightly knit together, and he said in a deep voice, "Could it be that Chu Tianqing or Xiang Wuji found this place? Come, let's go in and take a look." After he finished speaking, Blood Demon King and Granny Ghost turned into devil mist and passed through the narrow cave entrance and entered the devil cave. After the two of them carefully checked inside the devil cave, they found that more than half of the devil cave had collapsed, and there were rubble and earth everywhere. There were traces of blood flame, soul flame, and some kind of true fire everywhere in the cave, but there was no trace of the High Priestess and Ji Tianqing. In the end, Granny Ghost used a secret technique to find a handful of black ashes in the rubble. After Blood Demon King carefully identified it, he confirmed that it was the ashes of the High Priestess. This result made Blood Demon King so angry that his face turned dark, and his body trembled. He clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles cracked. His eyes were bloodshot as he roared, "Damn bastard! The High Priestess is dead, and Ji Tianqing has also escaped. Sky Pillar sex bastards. This king will never let you go." Granny Ghost's eyes flickered with flames as she said in a deep voice, "Blood Demon King, now all the demon generals and experts under your command are dead. Only the two of us are left. I'm afraid it's a bit unrealistic for us to kill our way into the Sky Pillar sect and rescue the Seal Demon King." Blood Demon King took a few deep breaths and suppressed his fury. He said in a cold voice, "That's right. Therefore, this king has decided to return to the Blood Demon tribe and gather the elite warriors of my Blood Demon tribe. Granny Ghost, you should also go to the Myriad Souls Cliff and gather the Sleeping Ghost army there. Soon, we will destroy the Sky Pillar sect in one fell swoop." "Okay." Granny Ghost pondered for a moment and nodded in agreement. Chapter 439. Tianjian Sect, inside the Divine Sword Palace. In a dimly lit secret room full of spiritual energy, Tianjian Sect Master Gao Yi sat on a fiery jade throne, looking at guest Huangfu, who was standing solemnly in front of him, with a somewhat displeased expression. "Guest Huangfu, Daoist Tianji has been missing for nearly 10 days. Haven't you found him yet?" Guest Huangfu cupped his hands in salute and said with a solemn expression, "Sect Master, I've sent people to investigate. Daoist Tianji left the sect after we went to the Sky Pillar sect to visit the Emperor. From then on, he never came back." Seeing Gao Yi's angry expression and worry, guest Huangfu thought to himself, "That damned Daoist Tianji. Since he entered the sect, he's been giving advice to the sect master and stealing my limelight. Now that he's disappeared, it's best if he never comes back." Although he thought so, he still had to comfort Gao Yi on the surface. "Sect Master, Daoist Tianji isn't a member of the Tianjian sect. This kind of expert who calls himself Daoist Tianji doesn't have a fixed residence and travels everywhere. It's impossible for him to stay in the sect forever. Although Daoist Tianji left the sect and made you lose a capable person, I've always been loyal to you. However, I have always been loyal to you and will still do my best to manage the affairs of the sect for you." Gao Yi's expression eased a lot. He nodded slightly and said, "Guest Huangfu, you're right. I won't mention Daoist Tianji for the time being. Tell me about the matter I asked you to investigate. Have you found anything?" Guest Huangfu nodded and said with a solemn expression, "Sect Master, I've carefully investigated and confirmed that someone saw the Emperor leave on a dragon 6 days ago." Gao Yi nodded slightly and sneered. He said in a deep voice, "No wonder Chu Tianji didn't say anything and drove away all the people from the sects. Previously, when the Emperor was in the Sky Pillar sect, Chu Tianji was showing off in front of all the sects and acted like the overlord of the Tianshan region. Now that the Emperor has left quietly, there's no one to back him up. He'll be obedient immediately." Guest Elder Huangfu frowned slightly and said angrily, "Sect Master, we were still waiting for the Emperor to preside over the situation and seek justice for our sect. I didn't expect the emperor to leave quietly. Obviously, he can't uphold justice for our sect. We can only rely on ourselves to take revenge. Moreover, I've already heard that the emperor left quietly this time to return to the imperial court to mobilize the imperial army. The Son of Heaven has already joined forces with the sky-bearing sect. He wants to mobilize a large number of experts and imperial guards to protect the sky-bearing sect, lest the sky-bearing sect be besieged by the various large sects. Sect leader, we can't wait any longer. It's impossible for the emperor to seek justice for us. We can only take action against the Sky Pillar sect before the Son of Heaven returns with the army. Only then can we take revenge. Hearing this news, Gao Yi's face suddenly changed, and he asked in shock, "What? The Son of Heaven wants to mobilize the Imperial Guards to protect the Sky Pillar sect? How is this possible? What right does the Sky Pillar sect have? Why should the Emperor mobilize an army to protect them? It's clearly us who are being bullied by the Sky Pillar sect, and we need justice and protection the most." Guest Elder Huangfu said solemnly, "Sect leader, the news this subordinate heard is basically true. Moreover, from the various signs after the Son of Heaven arrived at the Sky Pillar sect, the Son of Heaven has no intention of seeking justice for our sect. If we want to take revenge on the Sky Pillar sect, we must hurry up and take action before the Son of Heaven returns to the Sky Pillar sect. If we're late, we'll be the ones to suffer." Gao Yi frowned as he pondered, still somewhat hesitant. At this moment, Guest Elder Huangfu said with a solemn expression, "Sect leader, you don't have to worry about this matter. Just now, that lord quietly arrived at our sect, and this subordinate personally went to kneel and welcome him. With that lord overseeing things, you can rest assured." Before he could finish speaking, Gao Yi's expression changed drastically, and he stood up with a bang. "What? The lord has arrived at our sect? Where is he? Quickly bring this seat to welcome him." Gao Yi's tone was very excited, but there was not much joy in it, and more reverence and fear. His face was full of anxiety, and he immediately wanted to kneel and welcome the Lord, fearing that a great disaster would befall him if he was a step late. At this moment, the door to the secret room automatically opened. A voice that was as deep as thunder, and it was impossible to tell whether it was a man or a woman, or an age, entered the secret room. "No need." As the strange voice fell, a tall and straight man's figure stepped into the secret room with dragon-like steps. This person was tall and burly, and he wore a long golden robe with a wide dark purple cloak draped over his shoulders. He exuded a dignified and domineering aura of a powerhouse, as well as an incomparably noble aura. When he stepped into the secret room, the originally calm air in the secret room was squeezed into an invisible vortex by the aura of a powerhouse emitted from his body. Even the five-colored spirit chi that filled the air disappeared one after another, as if it was afraid of the golden-robed man's domineering aura and had hidden away. This man in a golden robe with a purple cloak draped over his shoulders was wearing half an exquisite crystal mask on his face. Crystals were almost transparent, but the crystal mask worn by the golden-robed man was obviously a wonderful treasure. No matter how one looked at it with their eyes or divine sense, they could not see the cheeks behind the mask, only a hazy gray shadow. The crystal mask covered half of the golden-robed man's face, and only a pair of bright red phoenix eyes could be seen. That pair of unique red phoenix eyes contained an indescribable charm, and a heart-palpitating majesty and domineering aura. When the golden-robed man looked at Gao Yi, an invisible pressure enveloped Gao Yi's body. Gao Yi's body shook, and he knelt on the ground in fear and trepidation, and kowtowed respectfully. Subordinate Gao Yi welcomes the Lord's arrival. Guest Huangfu's face was also full of piety, and he hurriedly knelt on the ground and kowtowed again and again. The golden-robed man walked straight to the center of the secret room, flung the dark purple cloak behind him, and sat on the jade throne. He glanced at Guest Huangfu indifferently, and Guest Huangfu's face suddenly turned pale, and beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. He had no right to speak here, so he tactfully bowed and left the secret room. The secret room quieted down, leaving only the golden-robed man sitting on the throne and Gao Yi kneeling on the ground. The golden-robed man remained silent, and the room was filled with a dignified and cold aura. The atmosphere was almost frozen. Gao Yi knelt in front of the golden-robed man, and his heart was in his throat. He did not even dare to breathe loudly, and his back was covered in cold sweat. He knew very well that in the past 10 years, the Lord had only sent people to deliver orders every 2 or 3 years, and had never personally come to the Tianjin sect. Chapter 440. Since the golden-robed man did not speak, Gao Yi did not dare to take the initiative to ask anything. He could only lower his head and wait for the exalted Lord's orders or punishment in the most respectful and humble manner. Finally, the golden-robed man said in a strange voice, "Gao Yi, this exalted Lord is very disappointed in you." Hearing this, Gao Yi's body trembled. He was so scared that his face turned pale and cold sweat broke out on his forehead. He prostrated himself on the ground and said in a hoarse voice, "This subordinate is incompetent. Please punish me, exalted Lord." The exalted Lord ignored him and said indifferently, "Among the 9 regions of the southern continent, the other 8 regions are ruled by overlords. Only the Tianjin region does not have an overlord and is directly ruled by the imperial court. The Sky Pillar sect is the leader of the 8 great sects and controls the ancient star realm. It is equivalent to the overlord of the Tianjin region. In the past 10 years, the Tianjin sect has developed so quickly, but you have repeatedly missed the opportunity to replace the Sky Pillar sect and control the Tianjin region for this exalted lord." Gao Yi hurriedly said respectfully, "Exalted Lord, the reason why our sect has such strength and foundation today is all because of your support and nurturing over the past 10 years. This subordinate and everyone in the sect is willing to serve you, exalted Lord, to repay your kindness in nurturing us. However, the Sky Pillar sect is a great sect with 1,000 years of inheritance. Its foundation is abnormally deep. This subordinate does not dare to make decisions on his own, nor does he dare to rashly start a war to avoid failing at the last step." At this point, Gao Yi paused and looked up to see the exalted Lord's reaction. Seeing that the exalted Lord had no intention of interrupting him, he carefully continued, "Half a month ago, this subordinate wanted to seize the opportunity and decisively declare war on the Sky Pillar sect. However, the emperor came to the Sky Pillar sect with the imperial court's imperial edict. The emperor intends to protect the Sky Pillar sect, so this subordinate does not dare to act rashly. This subordinate also heard that the emperor has quietly returned to the imperial court to mobilize an army to protect the Sky Pillar sect." The golden-robed man frowned as contempt flashed in his eyes. He said coldly, "Long Yunxiao's forces are limited to the central continent. What does he have to protect the Sky Pillar sect? As for mobilizing an army to protect the Sky Pillar sect, that is even more nonsense. He is only the imperial court's heir and does not have the right to command an army." Hearing these words, Gao Yi's spirits suddenly shook, his eyes surging with light and joy. "I see, I understand." The golden-robed man glanced at him indifferently and said in a dignified voice, "Now is the best time. If you continue to delay my plan, you and the Tianjin sect will cease to exist." Gao Yi's body trembled again. Fear and dread flashed in his eyes. He quickly kowtowed and said, "Please calm down, my lord. This subordinate understands what to do. This subordinate will go make arrangements and prepare to wage war against the Sky Pillar sect." The golden-robed man narrowed his eyes and shouted in a deep voice, "Fool! How can the Heavenly Sword sect replace the Sky Pillar sect with just the strength of the Heavenly Sword sect?" As he spoke, he stretched out his right hand. With a flash of light, a sandalwood scroll appeared in his palm. The golden-robed man flicked his hand, and the scroll flew towards Gao Yi. "This is my plan. You just need to execute it." Gao Yi quickly received the sandalwood scroll with both hands and respectfully held it in his palm. He solemnly said, "This subordinate will follow your orders, my lord. This subordinate will do his best and will not let you down." The golden-robed man looked up at the door of the secret chamber and said in a deep voice, "To Oberoi, come in." Following his order, the door of the secret chamber was opened from the outside. A burly red-haired young man wearing black leather armor stepped into the secret chamber with a dignified appearance. The burly young man's facial features were as sharp as a sculpture, and his eyes were red like 2 balls of flames. Although he was only 15 or 16 years old, His body was abnormally tall and sturdy, exuding a violent and intrepid aura. He was the Tuoba Roy that the golden-robed man spoke of. Whether it was his figure, appearance, or temperament, he did not look like a human. Tuoba Roy walked into the secret chamber and came before the golden-robed man. He respectfully bowed and saluted. Tuoba Roy greets adoptive father. Please instruct me. The golden-robed man nodded slightly and said in a deep voice, Tuoba Roy, follow Gao Yi and cooperate with him to carry out my plan. Understood. Tuoba Roy cupped his hands and saluted. Then, Tuoba Roy followed Gao Yi, who was holding the scroll with both hands, out of the secret chamber. Only the golden-robed man was left in the secret chamber. He looked coldly at the door of the secret chamber. His gaze seemed to penetrate millions of miles of space and see the distant Central State Imperial Court. He murmured in a low voice, after the Sky Pillar sect is destroyed, there will be a good show to watch. Central State has been peaceful for 1,000 years. It's time to create a big trouble for the old man. The Imperial Court should also be in chaos. I'd like to see how capable Long Yun Shao, that immature brat, is to secure his position as the crown prince. Speaking of this, a cold smile filled with hatred flashed in the depths of his eyes. Ji Tianqing cultivated in the secret chamber for another 2 days and temporarily stabilized his martial arts foundation. Now that Chu Tiansheng had entered the immortal cave to recuperate, he temporarily took over the position of sect master and managed the affairs of the sect. He couldn't continue cultivating and could only move to the Sky Pillar Hall on Crimson Firmament Peak. With the help of the elders, he quickly familiarized himself with and dealt with the various affairs of the sect. Early in the morning, Ji Tianqing held a routine meeting in the Sky Pillar Hall. He discussed the next plan with the elders and issued a series of orders. 2 hours later, the meeting ended and the elders left the hall one after another. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao were the last to leave. The two walked out of the hall side by side and discussed the next plan as they walked. At this moment, a black-robed deacon hurriedly crossed the square and quickly arrived in front of the two. The black-robed deacon cupped his hands and saluted Ji Tianqing. Then, he took out a sealed letter. Acting sect master, just now, an elder of the Tianjian sect came to our sect and presented this letter of challenge. He specifically said that he wanted to give it to Yun Yao. Ji Tianqing immediately frowned. A cold light flashed in his eyes. The Tianjian sect actually dared to take the initiative to issue a letter of challenge? Let me see. Yun Yao calmly took the letter. After opening the envelope, she took out a piece of xian paper from it. There were hundreds of words written on the xian paper. The words were vigorous and forceful, containing a fierce and frightening sword intent. It was very arrogant and overbearing. The contents of the letter of challenge were even more confident and arrogant. After Yun Yao finished reading the letter of challenge, she put away the envelope. She calmly said to Ji Tianqing, the Tianjian sect has a new chief disciple named Tuoba Roy. Chapter 441. How arrogant. Ji Tianqing shouted with a cold expression, reminding Yun Yao, eldest senior sister, the name Tuoba Roy is a bit unfamiliar. I'm afraid this is a conspiracy of the Tianjian sect. Yun Yao frowned slightly and shook her head gently. I also understand that the Tianjian sect is definitely up to no good. But the Tianjian sect has blatantly issued a challenge. This matter is related to the face and honor of my sect and mine. How can I avoid it? Ji Tianqing naturally understood this and nodded slightly. Eldest senior sister, since that is the case, I will accompany you to the star platform. No need. Yun Yao shook her head gently and said in a solemn tone, now is an eventful time. Master is in seclusion to recuperate. You are the temporary sect master and must stay in the sect. I will go alone. Since the other party issued a challenge to me openly on the star platform, there shouldn't be any danger. Since Yun Yao had made up her mind, Ji Tianqing couldn't say anything more and could only exhort, eldest senior sister, you must be careful. It's best if you take 2 guards with you. If anything happens, contact me immediately. And, don't worry. Yun Yao nodded and stepped out of the square. After a while, she rode the white crane spirit beast, left the Sky Pillar sect, and rushed to the star platform. Ji Tianqing stood in the square in front of the palace and watched the spirit crane disappear into the sky before turning around and returning to his residence in the Sky Pillar sect. He entered the secret room, opened the 100 treasures brocade pouch, and called out to Qian Yu and the little black dragon. Qian Yu and the little black dragon had been unconscious for 4 days and finally woke up under the call of his spirit sense. However, they were still very weak and their injuries were still very serious. Their souls were burned by the blue soul fire, which caused them to fall unconscious and sleep for 4 days. Ji Tianqing used the sleeping dragon ascension secret art to help Qian Yu and the little black dragon get rid of the soul fire in their bodies. Unknowingly, a day passed. The soul fires in Qian Yu and the little black dragon's bodies were dispelled and their injuries stabilized. Ji Tianqing then took out more than a dozen spirit pills and spirit fruits from a secret compartment in the secret chamber and let them take them to recover their strength. Qian Yu and the little black dragon only needed to sleep in the 100 treasures brocade pouch and recuperate for 10 days to half a month. Their injuries and cultivation would be fully recovered. After doing all this, Ji Tianqing stopped and sat down to meditate. Half a day later, he had recovered all his energy and ended his cultivation. He got up and left the secret room, walking towards the white cloud hall where Yunyao lived. He estimated the time in his heart. It would take about 12 hours to rush from the Sky Pillar sect to the star platform. The round trip would take an entire day. After Yunyao arrived at the star platform, her battle with the chief disciple of the Tianjian sect would end in at most 2 to 4 hours. Now that 1.5 days had passed, Yunyao should be back. At this time, night had fallen and a bright moon was hanging high in the sky. The sky was densely covered with stars. Half a quarter of an hour later, Ji Tianqing arrived at the gate of the White Cloud Hall. 2 young maids rushed to greet him and quickly bowed to him. Ji Tianqing asked, "Has senior sister returned?" The 2 maids quickly shook their heads and answered truthfully, "Senior sister hasn't returned since she left the sect yesterday." Hearing this, Ji Tianqing suddenly frowned and a trace of doubt flashed in his eyes. With the speed of the white crane, senior sister should have returned by now. Could it be that she met with an accident? Or is there something holding you back? Ji Tianqing was a little worried and told the 2 maids, "If senior sister returns, quickly come to the Sky Pillar Hall and report to me." After saying this, he turned around and left the White Cloud Hall. He returned to the secret chamber in the Sky Pillar Hall and continued to meditate and cultivate. Unknowingly, a long night had passed. Ji Tianqing waited patiently for the whole night, but the maids of the White Cloud Hall did not come to report. The next morning, the worry in his heart grew more and more, and he faintly had a bad premonition. Therefore, he ended his meditation and summoned the 9th elder. He asked the 9th elder to take a few guards and personally go to the star platform to check the situation. After the 9th elder learned of the situation, he immediately took a few guards and rode the spirit bird to the star platform as fast as lightning. Ji Tianqing sat in the Sky Pillar Hall and waited for news with a heart full of worry. 12 hours passed and it was night again, but Yunyao still had not returned to the Sky Pillar sect. Ji Tianqing sat in the Sky Pillar Hall and waited, feeling more and more uneasy. At this time, a messenger pigeon flew through the dark night and into the Sky Pillar Hall. The pigeon landed beside Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing quickly took a copper tube from its leg and took out a piece of paper from it. The piece of paper was a message from the 9th elder. It only had a few words, but it made Ji Tianqing's expression change instantly. "There is no one on the star platform. There is no trace of Yunyao." After reading this sentence, Ji Tianqing immediately frowned, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Something has happened to senior sister. That damned heavenly sword sect. Sure enough, this is their scheme. In the entire Sky Pillar sect, there were only 2 people he was most worried about and concerned about. One was Ji Ku, and the other was Yunyao. The Tianjian sect had used the matter of the letter of challenge to plot against Yunyao. This touched his reverse scale, and caused a strong sense of anger and killing intent to rise in his heart. Dragons have reverse scales, and those who touch them will definitely die. In Ji Tianqing's heart, there were also people he wanted to protect with his life, and Yun Yao was one of them. After that, he ordered the black-robed guard outside the hall, "Go and report to the first elder. Ask him to stay in the sect. I'm going to the Tianjian sect to look for senior sister." The black-robed guard bowed and received the order. He quickly rushed to First Elder Mu Yunhai's residence to report the news. Ji Tianqing stood up with a cold expression and was about to leave the Sky Pillar Hall. At this time, Yen hurriedly walked into the hall. In the past month, he had been cultivating in seclusion to break through the shackles of the Origin Core stage. Just last night, he successfully broke through the shackles and reached the first level of the Origin Core stage, becoming the youngest Origin Core stage powerhouse in the Tianjin region. Early this morning, Yen heard that the Tianjian sect had issued a letter of challenge and that Yunyao had not returned. He had been worried about this. When he saw Ji Tianqing's murderous aura, Yen hurriedly asked, "Senior brother Tianqing, where are you going?" Ji Tianqing said with a cold expression, "I'm going to the Tianjian sect to save senior sister." Yen said without hesitation, "I'll go with you." "No, Yen you stay in the sect and wait for my news," Ji Tianqing instructed with a solemn expression. He quickly left the Sky Pillar Hall, spread his wings, and flew into the night sky. He knew very well that if he went to the Tianjian sect to save Yunyao tonight, he would most likely have to fight with the Tianjian sect. Chapter 442. Ji Tianqing flapped his golden wings, turned into a golden stream of light, and flew across the night sky towards the Tianjian sect. As the night deepened, his expression and eyes became even colder, and killing intent surged in his eyes. The Tianjian sect was actually so brazen as to make a move on Yunyao. He couldn't help but wonder if the Tianjian sect had decided to shed all pretense of cordiality and start a war with the Sky Pillar sect. In addition to looking for Yunyao, he also wanted to test the Tianjian sect's true attitude. This was the reason why he went to the Tianjian sect alone. 6 hours later, Ji Tianqing finally arrived at the Tianjian sect and landed outside the Tianjian sect's mountain gate. It was already 3:00 in the morning. The bright moon in the night sky had already set in the west, and the light was somewhat dim. Under the night sky, the Tianjian sect was quiet and peaceful, as if it had fallen into a deep sleep. 20 guards were standing guard at the foot of the mountain gate. All of them were wearing white robes and carrying swords. Their eyes were bright and spirited. When the guards saw Ji Tianqing, their eyes and auras suddenly became sharp and fierce, and they all looked at him in unison. "Who are you?" The tall and sturdy guard captain, holding a black scabbard sword, rushed in front of Ji Tianqing in a flash and blocked his path. "Who are you? Why did you break into our Tianjian sect in the middle of the night?" The guard captain stared at Ji Tianqing with sharp eyes. His whole body was full of vigilance and vigilance. His right hand was holding the hilt of his sword, ready to draw it and launch a thunderous attack at any time. Ji Tianqing suppressed the anger and killing intent in his heart and said expressionlessly, "Go and report to your sect master. Ji Tianqing from the Sky Pillar sect wants to see him." Ji Tianqing? When the guard captain heard this name, his eyes suddenly glared, and deep hatred and killing intent gushed out from the depths of his eyes. He glared at Ji Tianqing and sneered contemptuously, "You're Ji Tianqing from the Sky Pillar sect? Ha ha ha, why don't you take a piss and look at yourself in the mirror? Who are you? What right do you have to call our sect master by his name? What qualifications do you have to see our sect master?" Ji Tianqing's eyes turned cold. He stared sharply at the guard captain and shouted in a deep voice, "I'll give you one last chance. Go and report to Gao Yi and tell him to come see me. Or tell him to hand over my senior sister, Yunyao." However, before he could finish speaking, the captain of the guards roared with murderous intent, "Otherwise my ass. How dare you threaten the sect leader of our sect? You're courting death." As he spoke, the captain of the guards drew his sword and unleashed all of his power, slashing at Ji Tianqing with all his might. The guard captain, who was at the 8th stage of the Tongxian stage, used all his strength to slash out a 3-meter-long sword ray. It was like a dazzling, cold waterfall. The sword ray emitted a biting cold air and a strong killing intent. It went straight for Ji Tianqing's head. Obviously, the guard captain was not trying to scare Ji Tianqing. He wanted to take Ji Tianqing's life. Ji Tianqing's figure flashed and turned into a golden afterimage. Instead of retreating, he rushed toward the guard captain. In an instant, he rushed 20 meters away, brushed past the cold sword ray, and arrived in front of the guard captain. "You're courting death," Ji Tianqing shouted coldly. His left hand stretched out like lightning and grabbed the guard captain's throat like an eagle's claw. The guard captain had no time to dodge or resist. His neck was immediately grabbed. Ji Tianqing twisted his left hand and broke the guard captain's neck. Crack! With the sound of bones breaking, the guard captain's eyes rolled back. Dark red blood flowed out of his mouth. He died on the spot. The 20 white-robed guards at the foot of the mountain gate all stared at Ji Tianqing with their mouths agape. They were completely dumbfounded. No one had expected Ji Tianqing's strength to be so terrifying. He had easily dodged the guard captain's full-force sword strike and killed him in one move. What they couldn't believe the most was that this was the territory of the Heavenly Sword Sect. Ji Tianqing had come here alone, so how could he dare to kill someone so arrogantly? However, the white-robed guards were stunned for only a moment before they came to their senses. The captain is dead. Damn Ji Tianqing, he killed the captain. He's too arrogant. Brothers, let's go. Kill Ji Tianqing. Avenge the captain. Many white-robed guards let out angry roars as they drew their swords and charged towards Ji Tianqing. Suddenly, the sound of swords being drawn could be heard. 20 cold lights lit up at the foot of the mountain gate. All the guards threw themselves at Ji Tianqing without any regard for their own safety. They waved their swords and slashed out powerful sword lights. They besieged Ji Tianqing. Swish, swish, swish. At that moment, dozens of 3-meter-long sword lights cut through the dark night and enveloped Ji Tianqing's figure from all directions. Ji Tianqing threw the guard captain's body on the ground. His eyes were filled with cold murderous intent. He waved his palms and rushed into the crowd to fight with the guards. He was wearing a white robe. On his back was a pair of golden wings formed by the Kenshin battle robe. Relying on the invincible defense of the golden wings, he ignored the attacks of the guards. His palms continuously struck out golden light palm shadows at the white-robed guards. Suddenly, the golden light palm exploded with an unparalleled power, sending the white-robed guards flying. Bang! 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 A series of muffled sounds exploded, reverberating in the night sky. All the white-robed guards who were hit by the golden light palm shadows spat out blood and fell unconscious at the foot of the mountain gate. The few guards who were not unconscious were also severely injured. They could only lie on the ground and wail. They could not get up to fight again. The sword lights of the guards were either dodged by Ji Tianqing or blocked by the golden wings. After all, these 20 white-robed guards were all at the 6th or 7th level of the mystic enlightening realm. They could not hurt Ji Tianqing at all. Ji Tianqing turned into a golden blur, flashing and shuttling in and out of the crowd. He was as fast as lightning, throwing out palm shadows that blotted out the sky. In just 10 breaths, the dull sounds of bang, bang, bang stopped. The 20 white-robed guards were lying on the ground in a mess. They were all seriously injured. Ji Tianqing was not injured at all. His white robe was not stained with dust or blood. He ignored the guards who were lying on the ground and wailing. He stepped over the mountain gate of the Tianjian sect and walked steadily up the wide stone steps to the mountainside. Tonight, he was angry because of a beauty and came to find Yunyao. His original intention was not to start a massacre. However, the people of the Tianjian sect were unreasonable. They spoke rudely and attacked first. They wanted to take his life on the spot. In this case, he had to kill to show his power. The guards of the Tianjian sect were despicable, shameless, and unreasonable. He would use his fists to reason with them. The people of the Tianjin sect hated him to the core. If they wanted to stop him from saving Yun Yao, he would kill his way out. Whoever dared to stop him would only end up dead. A new day, please recommend me. Chapter 443. Behind the Tianjin sect's mountain gate was a 30-meter wide staircase that led straight to the peak of the mountain. The Divine Sword Palace was located at the peak of the mountain. It was the residence of the sect leader, Gao Yi. Ji Tianqing stepped on the limestone steps and looked at the Divine Sword Palace at the peak of the mountain with a determined gaze. His body exuded an unstoppable domineering aura. The commotion at the foot of the mountain gate quickly alerted the Tianjin sect's guards and deacons. When Ji Tianqing walked 300 steps along the stone steps, he was blocked by a group of Tianjin sect's experts. There were 18 people in this group of experts. The leaders were 2 black deacons who were at the 5th level of the origin core stage. The other 16 people were Tianjin sect's guards. Their strength was between the 5th and 7th level of the mystic comprehending stage. 18 warriors rushed to Ji Tianqing's side as fast as a gust of wind, then spread out and surrounded him. Swish. 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 The 16 guards drew their swords and pointed them at Ji Tianqing. Their bodies were filled with murderous intent. The 2 black deacons walked over with gloomy expressions. They glared at Ji Tianqing coldly and shouted angrily. Ji Tianqing! How dare you trespass into our Tianjin sect and kill our sect's guards? How arrogant! Your Sky Pillar sect has gone too far. A mere sect leader's disciple dares to trespass into our Tianjin sect alone. Do you really think no one in our sect can kill you? The 2 black deacons' faces were filled with rage. Their bodies were filled with murderous intent. Ji Tianqing glanced at them indifferently and said in a deep voice, "Ask Gao Yi to come and see me. Hand over my eldest senior sister, Yun Yao. Otherwise, I'll trespass into the Divine Sword Palace." The black deacon on the left was stunned. He said with a startled expression, "What Yun Yao? Why did you come to our sect to look for Yun Yao? Are you out of your mind?" The black deacon on the right was infuriated. He gritted his teeth and cursed, "Ji Tianqing, you little bastard. He's so arrogant that he's out of control. Based on your arrogant words, I will definitely kill you tonight." As soon as he finished speaking, the black-robed deacon took the initiative to attack. He waved his palm and a dazzling flaming palm shadow blasted toward Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing stared at him expressionlessly. He seemed to casually raise his left palm, and similarly released the surging scarlet flame true fire to meet his palm head-on. Boom! The 2 flaming palms collided with a loud bang and burst into flames, illuminating the night sky within 100 meters. The black-robed deacon let out a blood-curdling scream as he was sent flying backwards. He spat out a mouthful of blood as he crashed onto the stone steps. His whole body was burning with raging flames. His robe and flesh were burned by the red deacon's true fire. The other black deacon was enraged. His face was distorted with anger. He didn't care about the reason anymore. He roared and rushed toward Ji Tianqing. "You're courting death, you evil creature. Kill him." The black deacon pulled out his sword and stabbed out 36 dazzling sword lights that shrouded Ji Tianqing's body. When the 16 guards received the order, they didn't hesitate to use their ultimate skills, brandishing their swords and attacking Ji Tianqing. Swish! 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 In that instant, hundreds of dazzling sword lights tore through the dark night, illuminating everything within a 100-meter radius. Hundreds of sharp sword lights were like a huge sword net that shrouded Ji Tianqing. He had nowhere to hide. Within 100 meters, the sword chi was everywhere. Even the air was cut by the sharp and domineering sword chi. Being surrounded by so many powerful warriors, Ji Tianqing was not afraid at all. With an expressionless face, he shouted, "Flowing light sword net." He used all of his power to activate the sword embryo, releasing 36 streaks of sword radiance. They circled around his body and formed a golden sword net. Swish. 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 The 36 sword lights split into 108 sword lights, making the golden sword net impenetrable. It emitted a sharp sword intent that soared to the sky. Hundreds of sword lights slashed down and hit the sword net from all directions. Bang! 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 Muffled sounds were heard. The deafening sound spread out in all directions and woke up all the martial artists on the mountain. The violent and raging energy exploded, shattering the bluestone steps on the spot and sending gravel flying everywhere. After the multicolored true essence light dissipated, everyone was able to clearly see that the sword net was still intact. Ji Tianqing stood proudly in the middle of the field. He wasn't hurt at all. He had blocked the full attack of more than a dozen experts. The 2 black-robed deacons and the 16 guards widened their eyes in shock. They couldn't believe it. In the next moment, Ji Tianqing waved his palms and performed a sword art. Bright golden light gushed out of his palms. Shatter the mountains and rivers. Along with his cold and emotionless roar, golden light and flames surged out of his body. He emitted a murderous aura that soared to the sky. In the next moment, he turned into a golden shadow and teleported within 50 meters. He waved his palms and released golden light and flaming sword lights that covered the sky. Swish. 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 In just one breath, he had released thousands of sword lights and sealed off the area within 50 meters. The 2 black-robed deacons and the 16 guards looked at the sword lights in shock. They even forgot to run. At the same time, thousands of golden light and flaming sword lights exploded with their strongest power. Boom! Amidst the earth-shaking explosions, the area within a radius of 50 meters was filled with golden light and flames. It became extremely turbid and chaotic. Half of the mountain was illuminated. The ground within a few hundred meters was shaking violently. The tyrannical and violent sword radiance shattered the bluestone steps, turning them into millions of stone fragments. More than a dozen guards were also sliced into pieces by the sword light, their physical bodies turning into powder. Even the 2 black-robed guards with the strongest strengths were minced into a mess, and they transformed into severed limbs and blood that scattered all over the surroundings. After a few breaths, the golden light and flames gradually dissipated. The huge battle gradually calmed down. The green stone steps within 50 meters had completely disappeared. The 2 deacons and the 16 guards had also disappeared. A huge pit was left in the ground. The pit was filled with dust, stone chips, dark red blood, and some body parts. Ji Tianqing had already left. He was on the stone steps 100 meters away. His white robe was still not stained with blood. His steps were firm, and he walked toward the peak of the mountain step by step. At this moment, he was like the god of death. No one could stop him from rescuing Yunyao. After a while, he crossed thousands of steps and arrived at the mountainside. There was a square with a radius of 1,000 meters on the mountainside. On both sides of the square were the outer sanctum of the Tianjian sect. The battle just now had already awakened everyone on the mountain, including thousands of outer sanctum disciples. When Ji Tianqing stepped on the outer sanctum square, hundreds of people had gathered there. Chapter 444. Even though there were almost 100 martial artists in the outer court plaza, they were all seething with killing intent, and their gazes were filled with hatred and resentment as they stared at Ji Tianqing, wishing for nothing more than to tear him into pieces. However, Ji Tianqing's ferocious might and the killing intent emitted from his entire body actually intimidated them to the point they didn't dare act rashly. Over 100 people stared at Ji Tianqing with a heart filled with vigilance, yet no one dared to make the first move. Ji Tianqing faced over 100 martial artists by himself, and his shapeless aura enveloped the entire plaza, actually suppressing everyone to the point they felt fearful and anxious in their hearts. On the peak of the mountain, there were 3 figures that were enveloped in true essence lights, and they were charging down swiftly like bolts of lightning. The strength of those 3 people had already surpassed the 7th level of the Origin Core stage, and they were obviously the elders of the Tianjian sect. After a short few breaths of time, the 3 purple-robed Tianjian sect elders arrived at the outer court plaza like a bolt of lightning. When the nearly 100 martial artists in the plaza saw the arrival of the 3 elders, they instantly gained their backbone and confidence. Everyone withdrew their vigilant postures, and they stared at Ji Tianqing with faces filled with killing intent as they revealed disdainful and cruel sneers. Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh! The figures of the 3 purple-robed elders flickered as they stood at the center of the plaza, and they stared angrily at Ji Tianqing. The person in the lead was the Tianjian sect's 3rd elder. The purple-robed man on the left was the outer court's elder Master Tang. The gray-haired old man on the right was the Tianjian sect's discipline hall's elder. Coincidentally, during the Dragon Mountain competition a few months ago, Elder Master Tang and the discipline elder personally guarded Dragon Mountain and supervised the competition on the spot. Both of them witnessed the scene of Ji Tianqing defeating Hang Chen with their own eyes, and they'd long since hated Ji Tianqing to the bone. The Tianjian sect's 3rd elder was the first to speak, and he shouted with a low and icy cold voice, "Ji Tianqing. You indiscriminately slaughtered the innocent, an executioner full of evil. The Sky Pillar sect is tyrannical and domineering. They bully our Tianjian sect in every possible way. Our sect has endured it time and time again. I didn't expect you to be so arrogant and brutal. You broke into my Tianjian sect in the middle of the night and cruelly massacred our sect's disciples. Are you trying to force our sect to declare war on the Sky Pillar sect? Tonight, I will definitely sever your head from your body and use your worthless life to pay tribute to the dead disciples of my sect." The incomparable anger made the 3rd elder's face turn ashen. His entire body trembled, and the murderous aura surging all over his body appeared to be a dark red flame. Ji Tianqing stared at him indifferently and said coldly, "You old dog, you don't need to talk nonsense, and you don't need to play dumb with me. You know very well why I went to the Tianjian sect in the middle of the night. I only have one request. Get Gao Yi to come out and see me, or hand over our sect's chief disciple, Yun Yao." Hearing this, the 3rd elder furrowed his brows, and a strange cold light flashed in his eyes. He glared at Ji Tianqing and cursed with murderous intent, "You arrogant thief. You're really brainless. How laughable. Why is your Sky Pillar sect's chief disciple in our sect? Could it be that you're tired of living, so you randomly made up an excuse to come to the Tianjian sect to die?" Despite the 3rd elder's foul language and curses, Ji Tianqing's face remained cold and his eyes were indifferent. Of course, he was angry. However, he disdained to express his anger and murderous intent with foul language. Only by using the lives and blood of the Tianjian sect's people could his anger and murderous intent be quelled. He looked coldly at the 3rd elder and said in a deep voice, 2 days ago, an elder of the Tianjian sect came to our sect and delivered a letter of challenge. The Tianjian sect's new chief disciple, Tuoba Rui, wants to challenge Yun Yao on the star platform. 2 days have passed, but Yun Yao hasn't returned. Our sect's elders went to the star platform to investigate the situation, but there was no one there. Do you still want to play dumb with me? After listening to Ji Tianqing's words, the 3 elders, the many deacons, and the guards all frowned and looked startled. The 3rd elder was the first to recover. He immediately flew into a rage and cursed with a ferocious expression, "Ji Tianqing. You damn bastard. Are you crazy or have you lost your mind? When did our sect send a letter of challenge? You killed Shi Wenyu, and his corpse hasn't even turned cold yet. Our sect also hasn't appointed a new chief disciple. Who is this Tuoba Rui? This king has never heard of him." Ji Tianqing stared at him. Suddenly, the corners of his mouth curled up into a cold smile. "Heh heh heh. Do you think you can shirk all responsibility by pretending that you don't know anything? The person who sent the letter of challenge is the great elder of the Tianjian sect. Gao Yi's seal is also on the letter of challenge. I don't want to talk nonsense with you. Get out of my way." Before coming to the Tianjian sect, Ji Tianqing was still analyzing and speculating whether there was something fishy about this matter. Now he was sure that this was a conspiracy of the Tianjian sect. The person who sent the letter of challenge was the Tianjian sect's great elder. The letter of challenge had the seal of the Tianjian sect leader. This couldn't be faked. But now, the Tianjian sect's elder was pretending to be confused and refused to admit it. Moreover, he had already gone to the Tianjian sect. Why hadn't the great elder and Gao Yi appeared? All signs pointed to the Tianjian sect's conspiracy that Yunyao's disappearance was caused by Yunyao's conspiracy. The third elder's face turned blue after being scolded by Ji Tianqing, but he was speechless and didn't know how to refute. Elder Master Tang of the Outer Sanctum immediately stood up. He stared at Ji Tianqing and cursed with resentment. Ji Tianqing, don't you dare make irresponsible remarks and fabricate nonsense here. What does Yunyao's disappearance have to do with our sect? Maybe she ran away with some wild man? What right do you have to ask our sect for her? When Elder Master Tang's words blurted out, the entire Outer Sanctum square went silent for a moment. Ji Tianqing's body shook. His pupils shrank, and his face became extremely cold. At this moment, anger that could burn the heavens and the earth surged out of his chest. A murderous aura that could shake the 9 heavens erupted from his body. The entire Outer Sanctum square was shrouded in an invisible murderous aura. The air seemed to freeze, and the temperature dropped to the freezing point. Ji Tianqing stared at Elder Master Tang and uttered 3 words in a low and hoarse voice. You deserve to die. As his voice fell, his whole body ignited with golden flames that soared to the sky. His body merged with the golden light and turned into a giant golden sword that slashed towards Elder Master Tang. This giant golden sword was 10 meters long and contained the power to destroy the heavens and the earth. It was surrounded by golden flames that soared to the sky. The dazzling golden light actually condensed into a huge white tiger phantom. The white tiger opened its bloody mouth and stretched out its huge front claws. It was like a mythological beast that descended from the sky to destroy the world. This move was the sacred sword of the 4 spirits that Kenshin had used. Ji Tianqing's cultivation was still shallow. He couldn't use the sacred sword of the 4 spirits like Kenshin and could only release the sacred sword of the white tiger. But even so, it was enough to kill Elder Master Tang. Whoosh! The sacred sword of the white tiger cut through the dark night and instantly traversed hundreds of meters in the night sky, drowning Elder Master Tang's figure. Nobody could react in time. Elder Master Tang had no time to dodge, and the 2 elders had no chance to intercept it. Boom! Chapter 445. Bang! A deafening loud noise spread out in an area of a few dozen miles. The outer court square within a radius of 1,000 meters was enveloped by a dazzling golden light, becoming dazzling and resplendent. Elder Master Tang was blasted into pieces by the white tiger's sacred sword on the spot. His fleshly body shattered into millions of pieces that mixed with a rain of blood and sprinkled onto the square. An enormous crater with a radius of 100 meters was blasted out of the ground of the square that was paved with rocks. The entire square was violently trembling, and with the enormous crater as the center, dense ravines split open in all directions. Dust and gravel flew everywhere, and the sky above the square was instantly chaotic. The violent golden light shockwave exploded out and swept through the entire square. The 3rd elder and disciplinary elder who were closest to Elder Master Tang were blasted flying on the spot and tumbled 100 steps away. The 2 of them hadn't even gotten up from the ground when they opened their mouths and spat out a mouthful of blood at the same time. The close to 100 martial artists that were gathered on the square were blasted into a mess by the destructive shockwave and suffered heavy casualties. Everyone was blasted flying and scattered around the square like sandbags. Most of the disciples and guards with weaker strengths were heavily injured by the shockwave and fell on the ground covered in blood. Over 20 True Element stage outer court disciples were directly killed by the shockwave and lost their lives on the spot. Only a few black-robed deacons who possessed strength at the origin core stage and were further away from Elder Master Tang were not heavily injured by the shockwave. After a long time, the white tiger's sacred sword disappeared, and the golden light and dust that filled the sky dissipated. The square recovered its clarity, and only then did everyone return to their senses. They saw that the entire square was shattered as if a super earthquake had occurred, and there was even an enormous crater in the center. The third elder and disciplinary elder were both injured, and Elder Master Tang was nowhere to be seen. He died without a complete corpse. After seeing the result clearly, everyone was filled with astonishment, and they looked at Ji Tianqing with fearful gazes as dense shock arose in their hearts. Everyone was unable to believe that Ji Tianqing was actually able to execute such a terrifying and peerless sword technique and blasted Elder Master Tang into pieces with a single sword strike. Elder Master Tang was a 7th level Origin Core stage expert. Could it be that Ji Tianqing had already surpassed the Yuan Dan stage and reached the Tianyuan stage? This question popped up in everyone's mind. Ji Tianqing stood in the middle of the square, at the edge of the huge pit. The night wind blew, blowing at his white robe and golden wings, causing his clothes to flutter. He exuded a domineering aura of an expert. His expression was still indifferent, and his eyes were gloomy like ice. His entire body was suffused with terrifying killing intent. That sword strike just now did not consume too much true essence. He glanced at the third elder and the disciplinary elder with an indifferent gaze. His figure flashed as he crossed the deep pit and walked towards the peak. The two elders were both shocked and aghast. Their faces were twisted with anger, and their bodies were trembling. Too arrogant. How lawless. Everyone, listen up. Kill Ji Tianqing at all costs. If you want to step into the Divine Sword Palace, then you have to step over our dead bodies. The third elder and the disciplinary elder shouted angrily as they gave their orders. As soon as they finished speaking, the two of them drew their treasured swords. Their bodies emitted a dazzling brilliance of true essence, and they disregarded their own safety as they swung their swords towards Ji Tianqing. The few black-robed deacons and more than 10 guards who were lightly injured also executed their sword techniques with all their might, slashing out sword lights that covered the sky as they surrounded and attacked Ji Tianqing from all sides. Instantly, Ji Tianqing was surrounded by the two elders and 20 experts. Over 100 violent and fierce sword lights descended from the sky like a rain of arrows, pouring down towards him and drowning his figure. Ji Tianqing was surrounded, but his expression did not change as he shouted coldly, "Those who block me, die." He condensed an oval-shaped shield with his true essence and unfolded his golden wings to protect himself, blocking the besiegement of the sword lights that covered the sky. Over 100 sword lights pierced his true essence shield and wings one after another, producing a bang 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 sound. Countless sword lights were shattered, but his true essence shield and wings were still unharmed. Water split. Ji Tianqing let out a low roar and unleashed all of his power. He unleashed a 20-meter-long sword aura and slashed toward the crowd. Boom! A huge golden sword light descended from the sky and slashed into the crowd, creating a huge trench that was 3 meters wide and about 100 meters long. 8 guards were killed on the spot, and 2 deacons were severely injured as they were sent flying with blood all over their bodies. Even the third elder and the disciplinary elder were forced to retreat, not daring to resist at all. Shatter the mountains and rivers. Ji Tianqing used the flying star sword technique again as his figure shuttled back and forth within a 100-step radius, releasing over 1,000 violent sword lights. Boom! The power of all the sword lights exploded at the same time, turning into a monstrous golden light and flames that filled the space within a 100-step radius. The few guards and deacons who were lucky enough to survive were killed on the spot by the sword lights, turning into a rain of blood that fell to the ground. The 2 elders were also heavily injured. Their bodies were covered with crisscrossing wounds, and blood kept gushing out, soaking their robes. In the blink of an eye, the square became empty. Over 100 disciples, guards, and deacons were either dead or disabled. No one could participate in the battle anymore. Only the third elder and the disciplinary elder were left standing in front of Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing. You're a crazy executioner, a demon. Even if we die here, we will defend the dignity of the Tianjian sect. We will not allow you to blaspheme it. The third elder and the disciplinary elder both roared hysterically, cursing out in rage. Ignoring their own injuries, the two of them exploded with all their strength and attacked Ji Tianqing from both sides, using their most powerful killing moves. Dual Sword Combination, Azure Rainbow Fatal Blow. This sword technique was one of the unique skills of the Tianjian sect, and it was also a joint attack technique of the powerful swordsman. When the two elders worked together, they could explode with double the power and defeat a strong enemy who was at a higher level than them. Swoosh! Swoosh! Two azure rainbow sword lights that were more than 10 meters long appeared, illuminating the entire square. The violent sword essence and strength chi blew up a hurricane in the square, sweeping up gravel and dust in the air. The azure rainbow dual swords, with the power to destroy everything, tore through the dark night sky, and instantly arrived in front of Ji Tianqing. The powerful sword chi sealed off a 10-meter radius around Ji Tianqing, suppressing him fiercely. There was nowhere for him to hide. He could only block and bear the attack of the azure rainbow dual swords. At this critical moment, Ji Tianqing stood still with a cold expression on his face as he stared at the azure rainbow swords. When the two giant swords were in front of him, he suddenly opened his wide golden wings and folded them in front of him, blocking his body. Wings of the Golden Rock. Boom! The azure rainbow dual swords exploded with destructive power and stabbed Ji Tianqing's golden wings almost at the same time, creating a loud explosion that shook the sky. Chapter 446. In myths and legends, the Golden Rock was a top-notch mythological beast that was almost on par with dragons and phoenixes. When the Golden Rock spread its wings, it could soar up to 90,000 miles. If it folded its wings, it could protect its body and possess an extremely powerful defense. Its wings were the Golden Rock's most mysterious and powerful weapon. It could be used to fight, defend, and protect itself. When Ji Tianqing folded his golden wings and enveloped himself, he was imitating the legendary Golden Rock. When the azure rainbow dual sword struck him, the golden wings trembled a few times. The destructive impact blasted him back. His feet plowed out 2 10-meter-long trenches on the rocky ground before he finally stopped. The golden wings were undamaged. Not a single mark was left on them. He was also safe and sound. He did not suffer any injuries. At this moment, the azure rainbow dual swords had already collapsed into thousands of azure and red shards that dissipated into the night sky. The third elder and the disciplinary elder panted with pale faces. Their eyes were fixed on Ji Tianqing, who was enveloped by the golden wings. Their eyes were filled with shock. He actually blocked our combined attack. What kind of treasure is that? It can protect him? Their expressions changed drastically as a bad premonition arose in their hearts. The third elder made a prompt decision and said to the disciplinary elder, "Go and report this to the first elder and the sect master. I'll hold him back." The disciplinary elder hesitated for a moment before nodding in agreement. However, at this moment, the golden wings unfolded with a whoosh. Ji Tianqing's figure was revealed. He was unscathed. He looked at the two elders indifferently and said in a menacing voice, "Your time has come." As his voice fell, flames surged out of his body. His body fused with the true red flames and turned into a giant flaming sword that was more than 10 meters long. Vermilion Bird Sacred Sword. The crimson flames on the giant sword condensed into the illusion of a giant vermilion bird. The vermilion bird swooped down from the sky and charged toward the disciplinary elder with a domineering might that could incinerate everything. Shwa! The vermilion bird holy sword pierced through the night sky, illuminating a radius of 1,000 meters with its crimson true fire, releasing a scorching heat that enveloped the entire plaza. The disciplinary elder was enveloped by the violent sword chi, and he immediately paled in fright. His eyes were filled with deep fear. Not long ago, he and the third elder had personally witnessed the scene of Elder Master Tang being instantly killed by the White Tiger Sacred Sword. And now, Ji Tianqing had unleashed the Vermilion Bird Holy Sword. Wouldn't he follow in the footsteps of Elder Master Tang? At this critical moment, the disciplinary elder panicked and turned around, desperately struggling to escape. The third elder didn't dare to block the attack. He turned around and fled without hesitation, flying towards the peak of the mountain. In the next instant, the vermilion bird's sacred sword descended from the sky and struck the disciplinary elder with a loud boom. Instantly, the disciplinary elder was killed without any suspense. His body crumbled into pieces. A deafening explosion erupted, shaking the heavens and the earth. A huge crater with a radius of 100 meters was formed on the ground of the plaza. Dust and stone fragments filled the air. The surging crimson true fire rose and dyed half of the night sky red, turning half of the plaza into a sea of fire. What a powerful sacred sword technique that could destroy the heavens and the earth. Ji Tianqing's figure appeared amidst the flames. He was still as straight as a sword, and his aura was domineering and majestic. He looked at the peak of the mountain indifferently. He stepped out of the sea of fire and walked towards the peak of the mountain step by step. On the peak of the mountain, in the Divine Sword Palace. In a hidden secret room, two experts were whispering to each other. One of them was wearing a blue robe. He was thin and had a sharp aura. He was the Tianjian sex master, Gao Yi. The person beside him was the tall and burly red-haired youth, Tuoba Roy. Gao Yi looked at Tuoba Roy with a serious expression and asked respectfully, "Young master, has the matter been settled?" Tuoba Roy grinned and sneered contemptuously, I did it myself. Of course, it's flawless. I have knocked Yunyao out and locked her in the Green Jade Mountain. I have trapped her with the chaotic heaven array and asked the Great Elder to stay in the Green Jade Mountain. Now that everything is ready, we're just waiting for the fish to take the bait. Although Tuoba Roy was young, his figure and appearance were no different from an adult. He exuded a valiant, violent and confident temperament. Gao Yi's expression softened when he heard what he said. His nervous mood also relaxed. He quickly cupped his hands and said flatteringly with a smile, "Young master, you are indeed the great lord's adopted son. You are a top genius in terms of talent, strength, and strategy. I admire you very much." Tuoba Roy smiled silently, but a touch of contempt flashed in his eyes. Obviously, he did not take Gao Yi's words to heart. With his identity and talent, he was a top genius even in the central province. Why would he need a servant like Gao Yi to flatter him? At this moment, the door of the secret room was opened, and an anxious man's voice was heard. Reporting to Sect Master, something bad has happened. As the voice sounded, Guest Elder Huangfu hurried into the secret room with an anxious face. Gao Yi frowned and shouted in a deep voice, "Guest Elder Huangfu, how can you lose your composure in front of the young master?" Guest Elder Huangfu hurriedly bowed and apologized to Tuoba Roy. Tuoba Roy did not even have the interest to look at Guest Elder Huangfu and directly ignored him. After Guest Elder Huangfu apologized, Gao Yi asked in a deep voice, "Guest Elder Huangfu, what happened?" Guest Elder Huangfu cupped his hands and reported, "Sect Master, just now, people from the Sky Pillar sect broke into our sect and started a massacre." Hearing this, Gao Yi and Tuoba Roy looked at each other and sneered at the success of their scheme. Gao Yi continued to ask Guest Elder Huangfu, "Tell me clearly, who came from the Sky Pillar sect?" "Only one person," Guest Elder Huangfu replied with a strange expression, "It's Chu Tiantian's direct disciple, Ji Tianqing. After he broke through the mountain gate, he went all the way to the Divine Sword Palace and threatened to ask you to hand over Yunyao. 3 elders and more than a dozen deacons went to intercept him, but they were all killed by him. Only the 3rd elder is still alive." Gao Yi was originally full of pride, as if victory was within his grasp. After hearing Guest Elder Huangfu's words, his expression changed dramatically and he shouted in disbelief, "What? Ji Tianqing alone killed more than a dozen deacons and 2 elders? Damn little beast, when did he have such strength?" Guest Elder Huangfu was silent and could not answer. Tuoba Roy's eyes flashed with excitement. He licked his lips with a bloodthirsty face and sneered, "This boy is interesting. I'll go and meet him." As he spoke, he strode out of the secret room and was about to meet Ji Tianqing. When he reached the door of the secret room, he stopped and ordered Gao Yi, "The fish has taken the bait. Send an order to the 1st elder and tell him to open the chaotic heaven array and release Yunyao. Brothers, let's give some tips." Chapter 447. On the other side, Ji Tianqing ignored the third elder, who was running away in a panic. He climbed to the top of the mountain with a cold expression and stood in the spacious square in front of the palace. He stared at the Divine Sword Palace on the other side of the square. The Divine Sword Palace was brightly lit, and many people could be seen walking and shuttling around. Shouts could be heard constantly. On the left and right sides of the square in front of the palace, there were rows of buildings, in which several elders and many deacons lived. When Ji Tianqing stepped onto the square, there were more than a dozen deacons and 2 elders gathered outside the gate of the Divine Sword Palace. In the palaces on both sides of the square, there were also many guards in iron armor, who were rushing to the square like a gust of wind. Ji Tianqing was not in a hurry to kill. He stood in the square and confronted many Tianjian sect elders and deacons. He looked at the Divine Sword Palace indifferently and shouted angrily, "Gao Yi, you are a powerhouse of the divine origin stage, but you don't dare to admit what you have done. You are actually a coward. Tonight, if you don't hand over Yunyao, I will kill my way into the Divine Sword Palace and turn the Tianjian sect upside down." Ji Tianqing roared with all of his strength. It was as deafening as a clap of thunder, shaking the entire square in front of the palace. His voice reverberated in the night sky and spread to more than half of the Tianjian sect. Tens of thousands of martial artists could hear him. In the Divine Sword Palace, even the people in the secret room could hear his voice clearly. The expressions of the more than 20 powerhouses who gathered outside the Divine Sword Palace changed dramatically. Their eyes were filled with anger and shame. Ji Tianqing was so brazen and unscrupulous in insulting Gao Yi. He was trampling on the dignity of the Tianjian sect and slapping all of their faces. This was an intolerable humiliation, a great humiliation. The 2 elders who were leading the group were furious. Their eyes were red with anger, and their bodies were filled with murderous intent. However, just as the 2 elders were about to take action, a sneer that was filled with disdain was heard from Divine Sword Palace. "Ha ha ha ha. Brat, you're so arrogant, do your elders know? With your insignificant strength, you dare to behave atrociously in my sect? I'll break your neck right now." It was the voice of a young man. It was filled with confidence and arrogance, as well as a hint of bloodlust. The 2 elders, the deacons, and the guards were stunned. They turned their heads to look at the Divine Sword Palace behind them. Ji Tianqing also frowned and looked coldly at the entrance of the hall. In the next moment, a burly figure with a head full of red hair stepped out of the palace gate. This person was wearing black leather armor, and his fiery red hair was draped behind his head. His entire body exuded a ferocious and wild aura. The contours of his face were chiseled, and his pupils were crimson red, like 2 bright flames. When Ji Tianqing saw this person, he could tell that this strange young man was most likely not human. Swoosh! The red-haired young man's figure flashed like a fiery light cutting through the night. In the blink of an eye, he arrived in the middle of the square. He stood in front of the elders and deacons, facing Ji Tianqing with a distance of 100 meters between them. Ji Tianqing sized him up and said indifferently, "You're not qualified to talk to me. Get Gao Yi out here to see me." Ha ha ha. The red-haired young man was startled for a moment, then he raised his head and laughed wildly as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. When his laughter stopped, he glared at Ji Tianqing and shouted in a deep voice, "Brat, I'll remember you. You're the first person who dares to speak to me like this. However, you're going to die soon. Everything you say now, I can treat it as your last words and pass it on to the Sky Pillar sect." Ha 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 ha. Ji Tianqing stared coldly at the red-haired young man. Seeing that he was unfamiliar, arrogant, and had a strong aura, a thought flashed through his mind. "Who are you?" The red-haired young man sneered and said in a mocking tone, "This young master is kind and merciful, so I'll let you know why you died. This young master is the new chief disciple of the Tianjian sect, Tuoba Rui. Remember this young master's name and don't ever meet this young master again in your next life." Upon hearing the name Tuoba Rui, Ji Tianqing's pupils suddenly shrunk and a cold light flashed in his eyes. "It's really you. Ji Tianqing's expression was cold and he shouted in an icy tone, "Hand over Yunyao, Tuoba Roy, and I'll spare your life." Tuoba Roy smiled contemptuously and said in a mocking tone, "Yunyao isn't in the sect. How can this young master hand her over to you? Where is she then?" Ji Tianqing asked again in a deep voice. The smile on Tuoba Roy's face turned more playful and he said in a mocking tone, "Take a guess. You're courting death." Ji Tianqing's patience had reached its limit and his anger exploded instantly. As he shouted coldly, a dark red murderous intent gushed out from his body and a dazzling true red fire appeared between his palms. Red Dragon Flash. A huge flaming sword that was 10 meters long appeared in front of Ji Tianqing. The flames around the sword condensed into the shadow of a divine dragon, which was baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, emitting a violent and sacred aura. Ji Tianqing exerted all his strength and pushed forward with his palms as heavy as mountains. Swoosh! The powerful red dragon flash tore through the dark night and turned into a flaming divine dragon, which rushed toward Tuoba Roy. At that moment, the dazzling flames lit up the square in front of the temple and illuminated the area within a radius of 1,000 meters. The violent and blazing flames enveloped the entire square. Many deacons and guards were forced to step back and dodge for fear of being burned by the flames. However, Tuoba Roy still stood in the middle of the square with a cold smile on his face. It seemed that he did not care about the red dragon flash at all. Blood Dragon Claw. Tuoba Roy suddenly shouted in a low voice. He also used all of his power, and his whole body surged with a bloody light. The bloody light that shot up to the sky condensed into the shadow of a crimson flood dragon above his head. The crimson flood dragon bared its fangs and brandished its claws. It was in a diving position and stared at Ji Tianqing with a murderous intent. "Break it!" Tuoba Roy shouted again and exerted all his strength. He raised his palms and slammed them down. That blood-colored flood dragon phantom also raised its massive dragon claws, exploding forth with peerless power as it fiercely slapped the scarlet dragon flash's huge flaming sword. Bam! With a deafening sound, the crimson flood dragon's claws smashed into the red dragon flash and smashed the 10-meter-long flaming sword into pieces. The flaming sword shattered into thousands of flaming shards that flew in all directions and created a flaming hurricane in the square. At that moment, Ji Tianqing clearly saw that Tuoba Roy's arms, neck, and cheeks, which were not covered by his leather armor, were covered in blood-red dragon scales. He could tell that it was not caused by any cultivation technique, but by the talent of Tuoba Roy's bloodline. Chapter 448. The so-called half-demon referred to a half-human half-demon. The half-demon's appearance was similar to that of a human's, but there were some obvious differences. A half-demon's body structure was more complicated than that of a human's. Their talent and bloodline were usually stronger than that of a human's, and they could become martial arts masters faster. Ji Tianqing had not expected that the new first disciple of the Tianjian sect would be a half-human, half-demon monster. This did not make sense, and there must be something fishy going on. At the same time, the flames and dust in the sky dissipated, and the fiery hurricane was also extinguished. There was a huge crater in the square in front of the hall. Tuoba Roy stood at the edge of the crater, and the blood-red flood dragon's shadow was still hovering above his head. He was not injured at all. He stared coldly at Ji Tianqing and sneered mockingly, "Brat, if this is all you've got, then die obediently." As he spoke, monstrous blood-red flames gushed out from his entire body, and he erupted with monstrous killing intent as he charged towards Ji Tianqing. Blood Dragon's Descent. Tuoba Roy's body turned into blood-red flames and merged with the flood dragon's shadow. The flood dragon was more than 20 meters long, and it had 4 strong dragon claws and a pair of large blood-red wings on its back. It was not as majestic as a divine dragon, and it was not as slender and strong as the little black dragon. This blood-red flood dragon did not have any divine aura, and it emitted an endless murderous and bloody aura, which made people wary. Without a doubt, this blood-red flood dragon was an evil dragon, a bloodthirsty evil dragon. Roar! After Tuoba Roy merged with the flood dragon's shadow, he opened his mouth and let out a loud dragon roar. He spread his large blood-red wings and flew 100 meters into the sky. The next moment, he released 4 100-meter-long fiery light pillars and dove down from the sky. It opened its bloody mouth and stretched out a pair of huge front claws. It attacked Ji Tianqing as if it wanted to destroy everything in its path. What a blood dragon's descent! Tuoba Roy's unique skill was similar to Ji Tianqing's 4 spiritual sacred sword technique. They were both terrifyingly powerful. Ji Tianqing was able to clearly sense that Tuoba Roy's strength had already attained the 9th level of the Origin Core stage. He was as powerful as Ghost Eye. They were both half-sky Origin stage cultivators. Shwa! In the blink of an eye, the blood-colored flood dragon swooped down from the night sky, bringing with it an earth-shattering flame, and fiercely bombarded Ji Tianqing. The entire square was shrouded in blood-red flames, and the air was scorching hot. Ji Tianqing was suppressed by a powerful force. Even moving his feet was extremely difficult. There was no way for him to dodge. At the critical moment, he raised his left arm without hesitation and used his trump card. He operated the sword palace in his body, mobilizing the 18 meridians and 96 aperture acupoints true essence, bursting out with 120% of his power. Instantly, his left arm turned as red as magma, and scarlet flame true fire gushed out of his palm. Burning sky palm. Ji Tianqing suddenly raised his left arm and fiercely slammed his palm toward the blood-colored flood dragon in the sky. A giant flaming palm with a radius of 20 meters appeared. It carried with it an earth-shattering force and directly hit the blood-colored flood dragon. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion erupted. In the blink of an eye, it spread throughout the entire Tianjian sect. At that moment, the giant flaming palm shattered, and scarlet flame true fire gushed out and covered the sky. The sky within a radius of a few dozen miles was illuminated red by the monstrous fire. The blood-colored flood dragon was also shattered, bursting with endless blood-red flames that poured down on the square like a torrential flood. The stone floor of the square was instantly burned red like magma. The surrounding forest and towering trees were all turned into ashes. The guards and deacons who did not manage to escape in time were instantly drowned by the blood-red flames. Their bodies were set ablaze, and they let out heart-wrenching screams. Only the deacons and elders of the Origin Core realm were able to withstand the power of the blood-red flames. They only suffered minor injuries. After 10 breaths, the true fire and the blood-red flames that covered the sky dissipated. The square returned to darkness, and the crowd could finally see the situation clearly. Ji Tianqing stood tall and straight in the middle of the square. There were no injuries on his body. Tuoba Roy stood 100 meters away from him. There were no obvious injuries on his body, but his face was as pale as a sheet of paper, and there was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. He arched his body like a wild beast and stared at Ji Tianqing with his blood-red eyes. He was panting heavily. Obviously, in the battle just now, his strength was slightly inferior, and he had suffered quite a bit. You lowly monkey. I've actually underestimated you. Tuoba Roy growled in a low voice. His heart was filled with shame and humiliation, and his body was surging with murderous intent. Ji Tianqing looked at him coldly and yelled back, "You're a half-human, half-demon stinking bug. Where did you get the courage to be my enemy?" His tone wasn't angry. His voice was calm and firm, as if he was stating a fact. That condescending attitude of an expert looking down at an ant instantly provoked Tuoba Roy to the point he was on the verge of going mad. "Ah! You disgusting monkey! I'll tear you apart!" Tuoba Roy roared at the top of his lungs. His entire body surged with billowing blood-red flames once again and condensed into a blood-red WIRM silhouette. This time, his internal organs were injured, causing his strength to drop by 20%. The blood-red WIRM size was obviously smaller. Whoosh! Tuoba Roy's entire body ignited with blood-red flames, and he instantly merged with the blood-red WIRM before flapping his wings and flying into the sky. Blood Dragon Annihilation. The blood-red WYRM opened its mouth and emitted a resounding howl. It spread open its wide wings and emitted billowing blood-red flames from its entire body. Half the sky was once again illuminated with a bright red color, like the scene of the rising sun. The blood-red flames that covered the sky actually condensed into over 100 small, vigorous blood-red WYRMs that were over 10 meters long and charged down from the sky. Every single blood-red WYRM contained an extremely violent force that was comparable to the full-force attack of a 7th-level Origin Core martial artist. Over 100 blood-red WYRMs attacked Ji Tianqing at the same time. It was as if over 100 Tianjian sect elders were attacking him together. Whoosh! 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 Instantly, the entire sky above the square was covered by the blood-red WYRMs. Ji Tianqing stood in the middle of the square and endured the full-force attack of over 100 blood-red WYRMs. Instantly, his body trembled continuously, and it was difficult for him to even take a step forward. This Blood Dragon Annihilation was obviously Tuoba Rui's strongest technique, a killer move that could destroy the heavens and earth. Not to mention that Ji Tianqing only had the strength of an 8th-level Origin Core martial artist. Even if Gao Yi was at the 2nd-level Heavenly Origin stage, it would be impossible for him to block this killer move. He would definitely be severely injured. At that moment, the sky above the Tianjian sect surged with a blood-red glow as a violent wind blew. It was terrifying, as if doomsday had arrived. Ji Tianqing was in a hopeless situation, but he was still calm and composed. His eyes were clear and cold as he looked up at the sky. He slowly raised his right arm and extended his right palm toward the hundreds of blood-red WYRMs descending from the sky. Chapter 449. When Ji Tianqing raised his right hand, a black hole appeared in the middle of his palm out of nowhere. He unleashed all of his power, causing the black hole in his palm to expand by 10,000 times and fly into the night sky. Swoosh! The mysterious black hole had a radius of 100 meters. It was like a dark whirlpool that suddenly appeared in the night sky. The huge black hole covered the night sky and completely blocked the area above Ji Tianqing's head. The whirlpool unleashed a terrifying power that could devour heaven and earth. In an instant, it devoured all the air and spiritual chi above the square. Even the bloody flames in the night sky could not withstand the terrifying devouring power. They all flowed into the black hole like water. Swoosh! 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 Countless bloody dragons descending from the sky were intercepted by the mysterious black hole and blasted into it. Tuoba Rui used 50% of his power to release the demon dragon destroys the world. He thought it could destroy heaven and earth and kill Ji Tianqing on the spot. Not only did the hundreds of blood-colored flood dragons carry an unparalleled force of impact, but they also exploded when they hit Ji Tianqing. Each bloody dragon could destroy an area with a radius of 100 meters. The simultaneous attack and explosion of hundreds of bloody dragons was enough to destroy an entire mountain. However, after the bloody dragons blasted into the mysterious black hole one after another, they did not even cause a ripple. All the bloody dragons that were blasted into the mysterious black hole lost control and collapsed into endless bloody lights. They were swallowed by the black hole in the blink of an eye. In just a breath's time, the hundreds of bloody dragons were all swallowed by the mysterious black hole. The end of the black hole was connected to Ji Tianqing's right palm. It was connected to the mysterious Kenshin's tomb and the 1,000-meter-tall sword steel. The simultaneous attack of hundreds of bloody dragons could indeed destroy a 1,000-meter-tall mountain and flatten an area with a radius of 10 miles. However, the mysterious black hole swallowed the hundreds of bloody dragons in the blink of an eye. The bloody flames in the sky disappeared. The night sky returned to darkness and the square calmed down. The scene that Tuoba Rui expected did not happen. The hundreds of bloody dragons did not burst into bloody lights or release destructive power. The square was still intact, and Ji Tianqing was also safe and sound. The mysterious black hole quickly shrank back into Ji Tianqing's right palm and disappeared. Although he appeared to be unharmed on the surface. But in reality, he had used up 40% of his power to make the mysterious black hole release such a terrifying power. After all, the mysterious black hole was under his control. The power of the black hole depended on how much of his power he used. Tuoba Roy's strongest attack was neutralized just like that. It was as if nothing had happened. The square was so quiet that even a pin drop could be heard. Tuoba Roy had used up all of his energy and was only left with 30% of his strength. The huge shadow of the blood-colored flood dragon dissipated, and his figure appeared, falling from the sky onto the square. Boom! Tuoba Roy's feet landed on the ground. His hands were on the ground as he panted with a pale face. At this moment, he was already an arrow at the end of its flight and had no strength to continue fighting. He had unleashed his strongest attack, but he still could not do anything to Ji Tianqing. This filled his heart with shame and anger. He slowly lifted his head and looked at Ji Tianqing, who was 100 meters away. His eyes were filled with rage and killing intent. Seeing that Ji Tianqing was unharmed, he was so angry that he almost vomited blood. How's this possible? He's only at the 8th level of the Origin Core stage. How can he have such a terrifying combat power? Tuoba Roy could not accept this result. His confidence and arrogance were crushed into pieces. What kind of attack did he use earlier? He actually neutralized my Devil Dragon Annihilation? Thinking back to the huge pitch-black vortex and the mysterious aura it emitted, he still felt his heart palpitate in fear. He stared at Ji Tianqing with bloodshot eyes. His sharp eyes seemed to want to see through Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing, as expected, you're quite capable. You're qualified to be my opponent. There was no doubt that from this moment onward, Tuoba Roy began to take Ji Tianqing seriously and saw him as a formidable opponent. Ji Tianqing stared at him indifferently and said coldly, "Unfortunately, you're not qualified to be my opponent." Such a disdainful remark made Tuoba Roy so angry that his face turned green. His body was trembling. However, he had already lost to Ji Tianqing. He would only be humiliating himself no matter how he argued. Tuoba Roy suppressed his anger and shouted coldly, "Ji Tianqing, I'll remember you. I'll definitely take your life the next time we meet." He turned around and was about to leave the square after he finished speaking. A cold light flashed in Ji Tianqing's eyes. His figure flashed a few times before he flew 100 meters away and blocked Tuoba Roy's path. Now that things have come to this, you still want to leave? Tuoba Roy. If you don't hand over Yunyao, I'll kill you right now. Ji Tianqing shouted coldly. Thick killing intent surged out from his body and the true core gold light accumulated in his palm. Tuoba Roy's face turned ghastly pale. The extreme shame and humiliation caused his face to twist savagely, and fine dragon scales appeared on his neck and face. Apparently, he was on the verge of going berserk. He was so angry that he was about to go crazy. At this moment, Huang Fu rushed out of the Divine Sword Palace. He led the two elders who were guarding the entrance of the palace and rushed into the square to Tuoba Roy's side. Ji Tianqing. You've gone too far. Your hands are stained with blood. You've committed a heinous crime. Huang Fu stood in front of Tuoba Roy and stared at Ji Tianqing furiously. He scolded Tuoba Roy with a murderous look. The other two elders also surrounded Tuoba Roy and protected him behind them. They stared at Ji Tianqing with a murderous look. Guest Elder Huang Fu led two elders to block Ji Tianqing's path, confronting him. Seeing this, Tuoba Roy stared at Ji Tianqing viciously. He turned around and left without looking back. He went into the Divine Sword Palace. Tuoba Roy, you coward. Seeing that Tuoba Roy took the opportunity to escape, Ji Tianqing cursed and shouted with a murderous look, "If you don't hand over Yunyao tonight, the Tianjian sect will never have peace." Hearing this, Guest Elder Huang Fu and the two elders shouted angrily, "How dare you, thief! You're courting death, you little bastard. Die, you bastard." The three of them waved their palms and released their majestic true core strength. Three huge palm shadows appeared. You've overestimated yourself. Ji Tianqing shouted angrily. He waved his palms and attacked without hesitation. Bang! 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 3 muffled sounds were heard. The 6 palm shadows formed by true core strength exploded at the same time and turned into light fragments. Ji Tianqing's furious full-force attack forced the 3 of them to take a few steps back. Their faces turned pale. Taking advantage of the fact that the 3 of them had yet to come to their senses, his figure flashed and dashed 100 feet away, charging towards the Divine Sword Palace. At this moment, a white figure shrouded in flames came from the mountainside and rushed to the square in front of the palace. Chapter 450. Yan rode the wildfire white tiger and rushed to the square in front of the palace as fast as he could. His young face was filled with anxiety, and his clear eyes were filled with worry. When the wildfire white tiger stepped onto the square, he looked around with keen eyes, as if he was looking for something. His eyes swept past guest elder Huangfu and the 2 elders, ignoring the many deacons outside the Divine Sword Palace, and finally fell on Ji Tianqing. When he saw Ji Tianqing's figure, the worry and anxiety in his eyes dissipated. Seeing that Ji Tianqing was about to rush into the Divine Sword Palace with a murderous look, he hurriedly shouted, "Senior brother Tianqing. Stop it." Yan Er's clear voice cut through the square and immediately attracted everyone's attention. Ji Tianqing had just rushed to the entrance of the palace when one foot stepped into the palace. Suddenly hearing Yan Er's voice, he immediately stopped and turned to look at Yan Er. Swoosh! Yan rode the wildfire white tiger and passed through the square in front of the palace like the wind. In the blink of an eye, he rushed to the gate of the Divine Sword Palace. Ji Tianqing frowned and looked at him. His voice was low as he asked with some doubt, "Yan Er, why are you here? Didn't I tell you to stay in the sect?" Yan Er glanced at the deacons outside the gate and quickly used his spiritual sense to send a message to Ji Tianqing, "Senior brother Tianqing. Senior sister has been found." What? Ji Tianqing's expression suddenly changed, and a glint flashed across his eyes. Where did you find senior sister? How is she? Is she injured? Yan Er quickly explained, "Senior brother Tianqing, after you left the sect, the Supreme Elder heard the news and was very anxious and worried. He asked me and the Great Elder to persuade you to go back and not be impulsive. Who knew that when we passed by Green Jade Mountain, we would meet Senior Sister? Senior Sister suffered some minor injuries, but it was not life-threatening. Great Elder brought Great Senior Sister back to the sect, so I hurried over to inform you." Hearing that Yunyao was safe and sound, Ji Tianqing's anger and murderous intent dissipated. The worry and anxiety in his heart also gradually calmed down. Great! It's good that eldest senior sister is fine. He pursed his lips as a look of relief appeared in his eyes. Yan Er looked at the elders and deacons on the square and quickly said, "Senior brother Tianqing, senior sister has returned to the sect. Let's go back quickly." The reason why Ji Tianqing had charged into the Heavenly Sword sect in anger was to find and rescue Yunyao. Since Yunyao had been found and safely returned to the Sky Pillar sect, he naturally wouldn't continue to fight. "Let's go back." Ji Tianqing nodded, then turned and left the Divine Sword Palace. The 2 of them crossed the square in front of the palace and walked toward the foot of the mountain. Ji Tianqing thought that guest Huangfu, the 2 elders, and many deacons on the square would definitely try their best to kill him. After all, he broke into the Tianjian sect late at night and killed so many guards, disciples, deacons, and even 2 elders. He killed so many people in the Tianjian sect, so how could the Tianjian sect let him go? He was ready to fight a bloody battle and kill his way out of the encirclement. However, when he and Yan passed through the square in front of the palace, no one dared to stand up and stop him. Even guest Huangfu and the 2 elders were so angry that their eyes almost popped out of their sockets and their murderous auras were boiling. However, they still suppressed their anger and just shouted a few curses, but didn't attack. The Tianjian sect's abnormal reaction surprised Ji Tianqing and made him puzzled. A moment later, He and left the Tianjin sect at lightning speed and returned to the Sky Pillar sect. Yen rode the wildfire white tiger and ran wildly on the ground. He flew in the sky with his golden wings, and the two of them were as fast as the wind. Not long after, the night gradually dissipated and the sky finally brightened. In the Tianjin sect, from the mountain gate to the square at the peak of the mountain, there was a mess everywhere. Several deacons led many disciples to clean up the battlefield with gloomy expressions. They cleaned up the ruins and corpses, as well as the blood stains on the stone steps and the square. In the Divine Sword Palace, in the most hidden secret room, 3 powerhouses were talking. Sitting on the throne in the middle of the secret room was the High Lord, who was wearing a golden robe and a crystal mask. The 2 people standing in front of the High Lord were Gao Yi and Tuoba Rui. Gao Yi's expression was extremely respectful as he carefully said, reporting to the High Lord, Ji Tianqing, that thief caused a big ruckus in our sect and has now left. The High Lord slightly nodded and said in a strange voice, a disciple of the Sky Pillar sect rashly broke into the Tianjin sect and started a massacre, wantonly slaughtering innocent people. Gao Yi, I don't need to say more about what to do next. You should know what to do, right? Gao Yi hurriedly nodded and said respectfully, this subordinate understands. In a few more days, this subordinate will be able to destroy the Sky Pillar sect and replace it to control the entire Tianjin region for the High Lord. The High Lord didn't comment on this. He looked indifferently at Tuoba Rui and asked in a deep voice, Rui, you're injured? Tuoba Rui hurriedly cupped his hands and said with some shame and indignation, Foster father, you don't need to worry. It's just a small injury. I'll recover soon. However, Ji Tianqing's strength is far beyond my expectations. It's impossible to guard against him. The High Lord nodded and ordered Gao Yi in a deep voice, when you kill your way into the Sky Pillar sect, you must kill that kid to prevent future troubles. This subordinate obeys. Gao Yi replied respectfully. In fact, even without the High Lord's order, he already had the intention to kill Ji Tianqing. Let's go, the High Lord said in a deep voice. He got up and walked out of the room with Tuoba Rui. Gao Yi hurriedly bowed and said respectfully, Farewell, High Lord. The High Lord and Tuoba Rui left the secret room and soon left the Tianjin sect quietly, just as mysteriously as when he had arrived. 6 hours later, Ji Tianqing and Yen returned to the Sky Pillar sect. Ji Tianqing flew directly to the Red Cloud Peak and landed outside the White Cloud Hall. The 2 maids guarding the gate immediately bowed and reported the situation when they saw him. Acting Sect Master, Senior Sister has returned. Acting Sect Master, Senior Sister was slightly injured and is recuperating in the hall. Ji Tianqing stepped through the gate and quickly entered the White Cloud Hall. He then went to the room where Yunyao was staying. When he entered the room, he saw Yunyao, who was dressed in plain clothes, sitting cross-legged on a futon. She closed her eyes and circulated her energy to heal her injuries. Seeing that Yunyao didn't have any obvious scars on her body and that her aura was fine, he was really relieved. At this time, Yunyao also noticed his arrival. She stopped circulating her energy and opened her eyes. Tianqing, you're finally back. It's good that you're fine. Yunyao looked at him with a complicated expression and greeted him softly. Ji Tianqing nodded and said, Senior Sister, how are your injuries? Chapter 451. Yunyao responded and then fell into silence. The 2 of them didn't speak. They just looked at each other, and their eyes contained a deep emotion. Yunyao stared at Ji Tianqing and said in a serious tone, Tianqing, you can't be so impulsive in the future. You broke into the Tianjin sect alone to save me. There are many masters in the Tianjin sect. If something bad happened to you, what would I do? Ji Tianqing smiled and said in a gentle voice, as long as I can see you safe and sound, I have nothing more to ask for. So what if I broke into the Tianjin sect alone? What's there to be afraid of even if there are strong enemies around? Hearing these words and seeing his gentle and firm eyes, Yunyao's body suddenly trembled and her heart skipped a beat. An inexplicable feeling filled her heart and made her feel warm all over, like a piece of ice that was about to be melted by the warm sun. There were some things and words that neither of them said, but they both understood in their hearts. Yunyao certainly understood that the reason why Ji Tianqing broke into the Tianjian sect so furiously was because he was too worried about her and was afraid that she would be hurt. If he didn't love her deeply, why would he be so furious? However, neither of them was good with words. They hid their emotions and desires deep in their hearts. Especially Ji Tianqing. Even if he loved her deeply, he couldn't say sweet words. He could only express his feelings with actions. How could he not understand that Yunyao's words weren't to blame him for acting impulsively? She was just afraid that something would happen to him and he would be trapped in the Tianjian sect. For the two of them, they were each other's most precious and most important people. Both of them would rather face the dangers of life and death than see the other person get hurt. At this moment, Ji Tianqing and Yunyao stared at each other. Their eyes and hearts seemed to be connected. That mysterious feeling of being connected by blood and having a resonance with their souls caused the two of them to look at each other with deep affection for a long time before their emotions gradually calmed down. Yunyao stretched out her slender right hand and put down a praying mat beside her. She patted the praying mat lightly and said to Ji Tianqing, "Tianqing, come here. I have something to tell you." Ji Tianqing nodded and walked to her side. He sat cross-legged on the praying mat. Yunyao said with a serious expression, "Tianqing, the Tianjian sect's letter of challenge is too strange. There must be a conspiracy behind it." "Yes, that's what I think." Ji Tianqing nodded and looked at her and asked, "Senior sister, can you tell me what happened after you left the sect?" Yunyao calmly narrated, "That day, I accepted the challenge and went to the star platform alone. However, I was ambushed halfway before I reached the star platform. I was injured by two peak origin core powerhouses. One of them was a red-haired young man, and the other was the Tianjian sect's Grand Elder." Ji Tianqing knew that the red-haired young man she was talking about was Tuoba Rui. Tuoba Rui was a half-step heaven origin stage powerhouse, and the Tianjian sect's Grand Elder's strength was at the 9th level of the origin core stage. He was only slightly weaker than Tuoba Rui. Yunyao was no match for the two of them when they attacked together. It was inevitable that she would be injured. After all, Yunyao was only at the 6th level of the origin core stage. Even if she unleashed her strongest combat strength, it was only comparable to an 8th level origin core powerhouse. Ji Tianqing said with a serious expression, "The person who sent the letter of challenge was the Tianjian sect's Grand Elder." The red-haired young man was Tuoba Rui, a half-human half-demon monster who was a half-step heaven origin stage powerhouse. Yunyao looked at him and asked, "The red-haired young man was Tuoba Rui? You've already fought with him?" "Yes." Ji Tianqing nodded and sneered. "However, he was defeated by me. A powerhouse who is half a step away from the sky origin stage was defeated by you?" Yunyao was shocked. She could not believe it. She stared at Ji Tianqing, who was close at hand. Her eyes flashed with a strange light. She felt that she couldn't see through him anymore. Before she met Ji Tianqing, if someone told her that a martial Dao genius only used half a year to reach the half-step heaven origin stage from the body refinement stage, she would never believe it. This kind of thing was even more ridiculous than legends. It had never happened in the past 1,000 years of history. But now, she believed it. Ji Tianqing only smiled and nodded. He didn't explain anything. In fact, only he knew in his heart that he was invincible under the heaven origin stage. With the help of the burial of heaven, he would be invincible even if he faced a heaven origin stage powerhouse. Because of this, he was so confident that he could kill his way into the Tianjian sect alone. Yunyao calmed down and said, "After I was injured, Tuoba Rui knocked me out. When I woke up, it was already last night. I was locked in the Green Jade Mountain and sealed by a heaven origin stage array. But somehow, when I was trying to figure out how to break the array unraveled itself. Not long after I escaped from the Green Jade Mountain, I met the first elder and Yen. She didn't need to say more." Ji Tianqing already knew what happened after that. After knowing the cause of the incident, he frowned and analyzed it with a serious face. It seems that the Tianjian sect used the excuse of challenging you, injured you, and sealed you in the Green Jade Mountain. They must have deliberately angered us. After I killed my way into the Tianjian sect, only a few elders came out to stop me. The Tianjian sect master and the first elder didn't show up. Moreover, I killed dozens of Tianjian sect disciples, guards, and deacons. I also killed 2 elders. The Tianjian sect didn't stop me and from leaving. Yin Yao vaguely guessed something. She asked doubtfully, why did the Tianjian sect deliberately anger us? You killed so many people from the Tianjian sect. Why did they let you go so easily? The Tianjian sect's plot caused them to suffer heavy losses. What do they want to do? Ji Tianqing frowned and thought for a moment. Suddenly, his eyes flashed and his face changed. I understand now. The reason why the Heavenly Sword sect is doing this is because they want to find an excuse to take revenge, an excuse to declare war on our sect. Yin Yao also guessed this point. She nodded in agreement. The Tianjian sect deliberately tried to trap me in order to intensify the conflict between our 2 sections. If no one went to the Tianjian sect, they certainly wouldn't have let me go. After you caused trouble in the Tianjian sect, the Tianjian sect could use this as an excuse to openly declare war on our sect. I didn't expect that the Tianjian sect would act so quickly. Are they ready to completely break off their relationship with our sect and have a direct battle? After speculating about the Tianjian sect's plot, Ji Tianqing and Yin Yao's faces became serious. They felt a strong sense of crisis in their hearts. Ji Tianqing frowned and thought for a moment. Then he said in a deep voice, Senior sister, whether our speculations are correct or not, we have to deploy our defenses immediately. I have an ominous feeling in my heart. In a few days, the Tianjian sect will declare war on our sect. Okay. Yin Yao nodded in agreement. She said in a serious tone, we will immediately report this matter to the Supreme Elder and strengthen our defenses as soon as possible to prevent the Tianjian sect from launching a surprise attack. 2 chapters in a row. 5 chapters today. Looking for recommendation votes. In addition, there will be a big update on Friday. Brothers, please wait patiently for 2 days. Chapter 452. Ji Tianqing and Yin Yao left Baiyun Hall and headed to Tian Palace together. Seeing that the 2 of them were safe, Xiang Wuji's heart finally settled back into his stomach. Of course, Xiang Wuji also scolded Ji Tianqing a few times. In his mind, Ji Tianqing was a perfect unpolished jade, while the people of the Tianjian sect were all tiles. Tiles were cheap and worthless, so it didn't matter how many were broken. But if the unpolished jade was scratched and cracked, he would be heartbroken. After Xiang Wuji finished nagging, Ji Tianqing told Xiang Wuji the whole story in detail, as well as his and Yin Yao's speculations. Xiang Wuji also agreed with their opinions. With a serious expression, he said, now that Chu Tianxing has gone into seclusion to recover from his injuries, our sect's internal strength is weak. This is a critical moment. Since the Tianjian sect deliberately set up such a scheme and caused such a big commotion, they must take action. No matter when the Tianjian sect declares war on our sect, we must prepare for a rainy day and take precautions early. Let's go. Let's go to the Sky Pillar Hall and gather all the elders to discuss this matter. Then, the 3 of them left Tian Palace and headed to the Sky Pillar Hall for a meeting. Ji Tianqing was the temporary sect master, so he had to carry out the duties of a sect master. He had to make decisions and give orders just like Chu Tianxing. After the 9 elders arrived, Ji Tianqing explained the Tianjian sect scheme and intentions to everyone. When the elders heard this, they were immediately filled with anger and indignation. They swore to protect the Sky Pillar sect's 1,000-year foundation and contend with the Tianjian sect to the end. After the elders finished discussing, he said in a deep voice, the Tianjian sect's wild ambitions are already clear. I'm afraid they will take action in a few days. Before that, We must set up defenses as soon as possible and strengthen our sect's defenses. There must not be any more problems. After saying this, he waved his hand and shot out a ray of golden light, which fell on the ground in the hall. The golden light condensed into a huge map. It was the topographic map of the Sky Pillar sect. Ji Tianqing pointed to the 9 mountain peaks on the map and said in a deep voice, "Our sect has 9 mountain peaks. 3 of them are located in the middle, while the other 6 are located on the periphery, forming a barrier. Our sect's 9 dragon spiritual veins are vast and wondrous. It is also a defensive fortress that is easy to defend but hard to attack. If the Tianjian sect were to declare war on our sect, they wouldn't be able to defeat our sect even if they turned out in full force. They only have one Sky Prime expert, Gao Yi, but he is not a match for our sect's Grand Elder." The strength of the Tianjian sect's elders and disciples was also inferior to the strength of the Tianjian sect's elders and disciples. Therefore, if the Tianjian sect dares to force us step by step, they must have helpers. The True Martial sect, the Wind Fire sect, and the Thousand Autumns sect had always been close to the Tianjian sect. I suspect that if the Tianjian sect wants to declare war on our sect, it's very likely that they will pull in the other 3 sects and join forces to besiege our sect. After hearing Ji Tianqing's analysis, everyone nodded in agreement. First Elder Mu Yunhai raised his eyebrows and said in a low voice, "If the Tianjian sect has the help of the other 3 sects, how could our sect not have it? I will send out a message and request for the Heart Moon sect, the Pill Cauldron sect, and the 6 Unity sect to come to our aid." As soon as he finished speaking, Xiang Wuji shook his head and said in a low voice, "This is not appropriate. These 3 sects are on good terms with our sect, but they may not be willing to risk their lives for us. Moreover, if the 3 sects are willing to help us, how many people will they send? So what if they have fewer people? They may not be willing to help us with more people. Even if the 3 sects send a large number of experts to help us, what if the Tianjian sect finds out and delays their attack and bide their time? Are the 3 sects going to stay in our sect forever? Therefore, we can only rely on ourselves." Hearing Xiang Wuji's words, all the elders fell silent. Everyone knew that the 8 great sects of the Star Ancient Realm only had a mutually beneficial relationship. There were no absolute friends or enemies. If they wanted to protect the 1,000 years of foundation of the Sky-bearing sect, they could only rely on themselves. Even if the 3 sects were willing to help, it would be a very small help. They could not rely on them. The hall quieted down. Ji Tianqing continued, "The Grand Elder's words are very reasonable. We can only set up our defenses and prepare for battle. Everyone, look at the map. Our sect's 6 mountains are used as barriers. The mountain protecting formation is also set up according to this. If the Tianjian sect attacks our sect, they will definitely attack these 6 mountains. Of the 6 mountains, the Immortal Peak and the Creek Peak are deep behind our sect. The terrain is dangerous and not suitable for attack. They can be eliminated. Other than that, only the Sky-bearing Peak, the Great Peace Peak, the Jade Sword Peak, and the Twin Moons Peak are left. These 4 mountains are very likely to be their targets." Xiang Wuji and the 9 elders all agreed with Ji Tianqing's analysis. Ji Tianqing continued, "Next, we only need to strengthen the defenses of these 4 mountains. Apart from the Great Elder, the other 8 elders were assigned 2 people to guard a mountain peak. There were 15 deacons and 150 guards and disciples. The elders will carefully inspect the mountain protecting formation. If there are any gaps, fix them. If there aren't any, strengthen them. Have the attendants and guards patrol day and night. As for the Grand Elder and the Grand Elder, they will stand guard at the Red Cloud Peak and guard the Spirit Vein formation. They will check the situation of each mountain at any time to prevent any accidents." All the elders cupped their fists and bowed respectfully, acknowledging the order. Xiang Wuji raised his eyebrows and asked Ji Tianqing, "Tianqing, you've arranged our tasks. What are you going to do?" Ji Tianqing calmly said, "Last night, when I was fighting with the Tianjian sect's experts, I gained new insights and gains. I might be able to break through to the next level in the near future. I want to cultivate in seclusion for a few days. Xiang Wuji's face lit up. He smiled and said, "You little brat, you're really monstrous. Forget it. With this old man standing guard here, you can cultivate in seclusion without worry." Soon after, the meeting ended. The elders left the Sky Pillar Palace and followed Ji Tianqing's orders to deploy people and set up defenses at each mountain. Yinyao returned to the White Cloud Hall and continued to circulate her energy to heal her injuries and recover her strength. Ji Tianqing also returned to the secret chamber at the back of the Sky Pillar Palace and began to cultivate in seclusion to break through to the 9th level of the Origin Core stage. Last night, he fought with the Tianjian sect for more than an hour and comprehended many profundities of the martial Dao during the battle. When he fought with Tuoba Rui, he used his secret technique with all his strength every time and unknowingly opened a few apertures. Now, he already had 101 apertures. He only needed 7 more to reach perfection and advance to the 9th level of the Origin Core stage. Time was of the essence. The Tianjian sect was closing in on him step by step. Perhaps a great battle would break out soon. Before the battle, of course, he had to raise his strength as much as possible. Chapter 453. At the border between the Heavenly Stellar region and the Yong'an region, in the 100,000 mountains. In an area shrouded by dark clouds, the Blood Demon Tribe's tribe was located deep underground, Blood Demon City. At this moment, in a huge square with a radius of 1,000 meters in Blood Demon City. The Blood Demon King stood on a high platform in the middle of the square, wearing a black cloak. His body stood proudly, emitting a domineering aura. On the square, there were almost 1,000 tall and strong Blood Demon Tribe warriors. They were divided into 10 teams and lined up neatly. These 1,000 warriors were the elites of the Blood Demon Tribe. Most of them were at the Mystic Comprehending stage, and the weakest was at the 7th level True Energy stage. The leader of each team was a demon general at the 4th level Origin Core stage. The square was surrounded by more than 10,000 blood demons. They were mostly weak, old, women, and children. Everyone looked at the Blood Demon King with reverence and admiration. They looked at the thousands of warriors on the square with envy in their eyes. In the eyes of the old, weak, women, and children, the Blood Demon King was the guardian of the Blood Demon Tribe. The 1,000 warriors were going to follow the Lord Blood Demon King into battle and create an earth-shattering feat. At this moment, the Blood Demon King's dignified eyes swept across the square, and he roared, "Blood Demon Tribe's people. For the past 1,000 years, we've been hiding underground like rats. Do you still want to continue living in such a dark situation?" His voice contained a bewitching power that spread throughout the entire square. The 1,000 warriors and the 10,000 Blood Demon Tribe's people felt their blood boil. They shouted bravely, "No." The Blood Demon King nodded and roared again, "Today, I'll lead the warriors of my tribe to the ancient star realm and rescue the great Demon King. This will be a bloody battle. The warriors here may die in battle, and I may sacrifice my life for the revival of my tribe, but I will never back down. Warriors of the Blood Demon Tribe, are you afraid of death?" The 1,000 warriors were fired up. They waved the sabers and swords in their hands and roared, "No." The Blood Demon Lord revealed a satisfied smile and bellowed, "The warriors of the Blood Demon Tribe are all brave and loyal warriors. This king will lead you to kill all the lowly humans and drink their blood to wash away our shame and hatred." The eyes of the thousands of demon race warriors immediately shone with a bloodthirsty red light as they shouted, "Kill! Kill! Kill!" The tens of thousands of people around the square were all infected by the majestic and excited aura. Even some elderly demons and children who had just learned how to speak were waving their fists and yelling at the top of their lungs. The demons were naturally bloodthirsty and warlike. These 1,000 years of dormancy had already suppressed them for too long. They needed a massacre to vent the hatred and bloodthirsty nature in their hearts. In the southwest of the Heavenly Stellar region, at the border between the Changfeng Nation and the Heavenly Sun Nation, there was a terrifying abyss. This abyss was 20 miles long and bottomless. It was shrouded in a thick gray fog and filled with a ghastly ghost chi. This place was called the Myriad Souls Cliff. 100 years ago, the two nations annexed and killed each other. A cruel war broke out and lasted for more than 10 years. In the end, the two nations gathered 1 million soldiers and fought a decisive battle here. In that extremely tragic decisive battle, a total of more than 800,000 soldiers had died on the battlefield, forever resting here. The area with a radius of 100 miles was originally a vast plain, but it became an abyss because of that battle. The blood of the 800,000 soldiers dyed the plain red and even gathered into a river in the abyss. After the battle, the corpses of the 800,000 soldiers were all thrown into the abyss. From then on, this place became the most infamous Myriad Souls Cliff in the heavenly stellar region. Ordinary people did not dare to come close. Even mystic comprehending experts would die if they accidentally entered the Myriad Souls Cliff. At this point, 100 years had passed. At the bottom of the bottomless Myriad Souls Cliff, the piles of white bones had been weathered into broken bones. There were only countless remnant souls and wraiths wandering alone in the abyss, letting out whimpers that sounded like they were weeping and complaining. At this moment, in the sky above the Myriad Souls Cliff, in the gray fog, stood a short and skinny old woman in a black robe. She was holding a dagger-headed walking stick. She was Granny Ghost. Granny Ghost reached out her left hand, which was as dry as a chicken's claw. She used 3 of her fingers to form a strange incantation gesture. She held the dagger-headed walking stick in her right hand and waved it in a mysterious arc, sprinkling dark green flames into the Myriad Souls Cliff. Moreover, her lips that were shriveled like tree bark were ceaselessly opening and closing as she chanted strange, incomprehensible, and ghastly and mysterious incantations. It was obvious that Granny Ghost was using a secret technique. As time passed, the dead silence at the bottom of the cliff of 10,000 souls began to stir. The white bones scattered in the dusty ruins rolled and gathered together, as if they were blown by a gust of wind. With a soft rustling sound, the endless white bones piled up into small white hills. Nearly 10,000 dark green flames poured down from the sky and landed on those small mountains of bones. Immediately, skeletons began to form from the small mountain of white bones. 2 balls of dark green flames flickered in the eye sockets of each skeleton. They held swords and spears made from white bones in their hands. The white skeletons seemed to have intelligence. They formed teams in the abyss and stood quietly, waiting for their master's orders. After all, these spirits and skeletons were soldiers of the 2 countries when they were alive. Even though they had become spirit skeletons, they still retained some of their habits when they were alive. For example, they were orderly and obeyed orders. With the continuous rustling sound, more and more spirit skeletons gathered in the abyss. After about 6 hours, 10 teams had gathered in the abyss. There were more than 10,000 spirit skeletons. Only then did Granny Ghost stop casting the spell. Looking down at the army of ghosts in the abyss, she growled with a dry and hoarse voice, "Sleeping ghosts, you are all dead souls who died in the war 100 years ago. I have woken you up with the 1,000 ghosts' great magic, and you are now my servants." Following her words, the spirit army in the abyss knelt down on one knee to show their allegiance to Granny Ghost. Granny Ghost's deep eyes showed a satisfied smile. She continued, "After 100 years, I will take you out of the abyss and into the human world. Fight to your heart's content and vent your hatred and resentment. Use the blood and heads of your enemies to show off your military exploits and wash away your humiliation and hatred. I will lead you to turn the ancient star realm into a bloody battlefield. You can kill to your heart's content." Tens of thousands of ghost skeletons waved their swords, spears, and halberds, letting out soundless roars and roars. Chapter 454. For days passed in the blink of an eye. Ji Tianqing originally thought that he only needed to enter into closed-door cultivation for 3 days before being able to break through to the 9th level of the origin core stage. However, he cultivated in closed-door cultivation for an entire 4 days and 4 nights before only opening up 7 apertures. Presently, He already possessed 108 apertures and had completed the cultivation of the 7th level of the Sword Heart Dao. His strength had naturally attained the 9th level of the Origin Core stage as well. At dawn, Ji Tianqing ended his closed-door cultivation and opened his eyes. His face revealed a satisfied expression when he felt his strength had doubled. However, he pondered for a moment before frowning and muttering in a low voice. I originally thought that I only needed 3 days to smoothly break through, but I never imagined that it would take 4 days. Could it be that there's a problem with the spirit convergence formation in this room? Why is the spirit energy of heaven and earth gathered weaker than before? Under his bewilderment, Ji Tianqing carefully inspected the spirit convergence formation before confirming that there was no problem with the formation. Thus, he didn't pay attention to this matter and stood up to walk out of the room. After washing up, he left Sky Pillar Hall and walked towards White Cloud Hall. He was concerned about Yun Yao's situation, so he went to visit Yun Yao first. When he saw Yun Yao was meditating and cultivating in her room, comprehending ultimate techniques. Ji Tianqing only found out after asking that she'd cultivated in closed-door cultivation for 3 days, and her injuries and cultivation had both recovered. Ji Tianqing chatted with her for a while, gently and carefully exhorting her with a few words before bidding his farewell and leaving. After walking out of White Cloud Hall, he saw that Yan Er's residence was next door, so he entered the hall to visit Yan Er. Under the guidance of the female attendant, he passed through 2 corridors and walked towards Yan Er's room. He just walked to the door when he saw an enormous 5-meter-long white enormous beast lying at the door. It was precisely Yan Er's mount, the wildfire white tiger. Its entire body was blazing white like jade, a single horn grew on its forehead, and its body faintly emitted the energy of wildfire. With such an Origin Core stage spirit beast blocking the door, Yan completely did not need the protection of guards and was very safe. Ji Tian walked in front of the wildfire white tiger and smiled. He said in a teasing tone, "Little White, long time no see. You've grown fatter." The wildfire white tiger raised its head and stared at him coldly. It opened its mouth and let out a few low growls. Looking at its eyes and appearance, it seemed that its pride had been hurt by this sentence, and it was a little irritable and angry. Ji Tianqing couldn't help but frown as he muttered to himself, "What's wrong with Little White? With its intelligence, how could it not remember me?" At this moment, Yan walked out of the room, came to the door, and greeted with a smile. "Senior brother Tianqing, why are you here?" "Well, I'm here to see you." Ji Tianqing nodded and responded. He pointed at the wildfire white tiger and asked, "Yan what happened to Little White? It seems a little irritable." Yan hurriedly ordered the wildfire white tiger to move aside and welcome Ji Tianqing into the room. She explained, "Senior brother Tianqing, I don't know what's going on either. Little White has been restless for the past few days. I want to ask it what's going on, but it can't communicate with me." "That's easy, I'll have Qian Yu ask it." Ji Tianqing took out the 100 treasures brocade pouch and let Qian Yu out. In the past few days, Qian Yu and the little black dragon have been recuperating in the 100 treasures brocade pouch. After Ji Tianqing explained the situation, Qian Yu confidently patted its chest and said, "Don't worry old Ji, leave this kind of small matter to me." It flapped its wings and flew out of the room to find the wildfire white tiger to ask about the situation. Ji Tianqing chatted with Yan for a while and found that Yan had reached the peak of Origin Core first layer and was about to break through to the second layer. It's only been 4 days and junior brother Yan is about to break through again?" Yan nodded with a smile and said happily, "Senior brother Tianqing, ever since you helped me clear the wildfire, my cultivation has been getting twice the results with half the effort. My strength has also improved very quickly. The sect has been in a dangerous situation recently, so I didn't dare to be negligent. I worked hard day and night, so my strength has improved very quickly." Ji Tianqing smiled with relief and nodded. "Junior brother Yan your future achievements are limitless. Senior sister reached the Yuan Dan stage at 19, and I at 17. You reached the Yuan Dan stage at 11. You've already surpassed me and senior sister. You're the #1 genius of the sect now." Yan was a little embarrassed and smiled shyly. Senior brother Tianqing, don't make fun of me. At this time, Qian Yu flew back to the room and came to Ji Tianqing's side. It said in a deep voice, Old Ji, I just asked Little White. It said that in the past few days, the world's spirit energy has become thinner and thinner. Moreover, it seems that there is some kind of mysterious force that has been suppressing and imprisoning it, making it very uncomfortable and oppressive. That's why it's a little irritable. Hearing this, Ji Tianqing's expression changed slightly and he frowned. Although he did not understand what was going on, he felt an uneasy feeling. However, he felt a sense of uneasiness in his heart. He had a bad premonition. Ji Tianqing chatted with Yan for a while, then he said goodbye and left. On the way back to the heaven-raising palace, he paid special attention to the surrounding situation. He soon found that the forest and thorny bushes on Qi Shao Peak were not as green and lush as before. They were actually a little withered, showing a decaying appearance. The leaves of many big trees had withered and yellow, and there were countless low flowers and shrubs that had withered and died. A few days ago, the flowers and trees on Qi Shao Peak were still thriving like spring. Now, the entire Qi Shao Peak had entered autumn. The flowers and plants had withered and fallen leaves danced in the sky. The square outside the heaven-raising palace was originally clean and tidy, but now it was full of fallen leaves. Even if the odd-job disciples cleaned twice a day, they could not clean up all the fallen leaves. Although it was afternoon, the sky was dark and there was not the slightest bit of sunlight. Above the mountains of the heaven-raising sect, gray clouds faintly condensed, making people feel depressed. Ji Tianqing used his qi to sense the world's spirit energy and could sense that the world's spirit energy on the mountain was indeed very weak. I thought it was an illusion before, but I didn't expect it to be true. How could this be? He frowned, his eyes full of worry. After thinking for a while, he decided to go to the heaven-raising palace and gather a few elders to ask about the situation. When he entered the heaven-raising palace, he saw a few elders standing in the main hall, discussing in low voices with anxious expressions. Xiang Wuji sat on the left side of the main seat, also frowning and thinking silently. When Ji Tianqing walked into the main hall, he heard a few elders talking about this matter. Half of my jade sword peak has withered and turned yellow. Fallen leaves are piled up everywhere. It's the same on heaven-raising peak. Not only have the flowers and trees withered, but even the spirit herbs that I have carefully cultivated have withered. It's really too strange. What's going on? It was still fine a few days ago, but in just a few days, the world's spirit energy in our sect has withered to such an extent? The flowers, trees, and spirit herbs have withered. Even the cultivation of the sect's disciples has become a problem. Yes, it's already very difficult for the outer sect disciples to absorb the world's spirit energy. Now that rumors are spreading in the sect, the disciples are very frightened. It's too strange. This has never happened in our sect for nearly 300 years, right? In the past 4 days, Ji Tianqing had been cultivating in seclusion and was not aware of the abnormal changes in the heaven-raising sect. Chapter 455. When the elders in the hall saw Ji Tianqing enter the hall, they stopped their discussion and greeted him. Xiang Wuji saw him and hurriedly said, Tianqing, you came at the right time. I have something to tell you. Ji Tianqing walked to the main seat and sat down. He said to Xiang Wuji, Old Master, I just came out of seclusion and found out about the abnormal changes in our sect. I wanted to discuss this with you. Xiang Wuji said seriously, Tianqing, now that the spiritual energy in our sect has dried up, the flowers and trees are dying, and even the protective mountain array is on the verge of collapse. This is most likely related to the spiritual vein array. I'm afraid there's a big problem with our 9-dragon spiritual vein. Ji Tianqing nodded and asked, Old Master, have you checked the spiritual vein array? Did you find out the reason? Xiang Wuji shook his head and said helplessly, After I sensed that something was wrong, I went to check it out a few times. But even with my attainments in the array Dao, I couldn't find any clues. What I'm most worried about is still the ceiling array. Once the power of the 9-dragon trapping array is depleted, I'm afraid that unparalleled demon. He didn't need to say the rest. Everyone could guess what he was going to say. Their faces turned even uglier. Ji Tianqing frowned and thought for a moment. He made a prompt decision and ordered, "First elder, second elder, you two immediately follow the grand elder into the spiritual vein array and check the reason carefully. Even if you can't find the reason, you have to think of a way to remedy it. You can't let the spiritual vein array continue to weaken." First elder and second elder immediately accepted the order. Under Xiang Wuji's lead, they left the towering sky hall and rushed to the underground spiritual vein array. Ji Tianqing ordered again, "Third elder, fourth elder, fifth elder, and sixth elder, the four of you immediately go and check the protective mountain array and think of a way to replenish its power. If there's really no other way, take 500 spiritual stones from our sect's treasury and use them to replenish your spiritual energy." The four elders solemnly cupped their hands and accepted the order. Then, they turned around and left the hall to carry out the mission. In the blink of an eye, only Ji Tianqing and the three elders were left in the hall. Ji Tianqing's gaze swept across the three of them. Seeing that they were also filled with anxiety and worry, he said, "Elders, quickly go to the inner and outer court and gather the disciples in the sect. Try your best to appease them." Without waiting for the three elders to leave, a black-robed guard rushed into the main hall as fast as the wind with a panicked expression. "Report. Reporting to the acting sect leader, something's not good. The sect. The news." How could they move so quickly? He never expected that the Tianjian sect would have already arrived when he had just finished his seclusion and had yet to figure out the problem of the depletion of spiritual energy. The black-robed guard was powerless to explain anything. He could only anxiously urge, "Acting sect leader, the heaven-upholding peak guards can't hold on much longer. Quickly send reinforcements." Ji Tianqing's angry expression was ice-cold, and his entire body surged with a monstrous killing intent. Just as he was about to give the order, two more black-robed guards rushed into the hall, one in front and one behind. The two of them were extremely anxious. They rushed into the hall as fast as the wind and reporting to the acting sect leader. People from the Thousand Autumn sect suddenly appeared at the foot of Jade Sword Peak and are attacking the sect protecting array. Reporting to the acting sect leader. The several hundred disciples of the true martial sect are attacking the sect protecting array at the foot of Great Peace Peak. Ji Tianqing's brows furrowed together. He shouted in disbelief, "What? The Thousand Autumn sect and the true martial sect are actually attacking our sect at the same time? Could it be that it's just as I guessed? The Tianjian sect instigated the other three great sects to join forces and attack our sect?" Sure enough, as soon as he finished speaking, another black-robed guard rushed into the hall with an anxious look on his face. Reporting to the acting sect leader. The several hundred experts of the Wind and Fire sect are attacking the sect protecting array at Twin Moon Peak. The four great sects had actually attacked at the same time. Moreover, they had come so suddenly. This was simply like a sudden clap of thunder. Even though Ji Tianqing had made arrangements 4 days ago, he was still deeply caught unprepared. He had never expected that the 9 dragon spirit veins of the sky upholding sect would have a problem, causing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to be depleted. Now that the Tianjian sect and the other 3 great sects had suddenly attacked, the sky upholding sect was truly facing internal and external troubles. It had reached a point of life and death. Ji Tianqing was extremely furious. His eyes surged with monstrous killing intent. He shouted in a low voice, "Gao Yi! You despicable and shameless slut! You deliberately schemed against our sect and incited the other 3 great sects to join forces with you to besiege our sky-upholding sect. Today, if I, Ji Tianqing, don't tear you to pieces, I swear I'm not human." Ji Tianqing roared with a heart full of killing intent, causing the entire sky-upholding hall to tremble and sway. When his voice fell, he decisively ordered, 3 elders, immediately head to Twin Moon Peak to provide support. Guards, quickly inform the other elders and have them reinforce Jade Sword Peak and Great Peace Peak. I want to personally head to Sky Upholding Peak to stop the scum of the Tianjin sect. Ji Tianqing gave 3 orders in one breath without the slightest bit of panic. The 7th elder and the 8th elder immediately left the main hall and ran as fast as lightning to support the double moon peak. The 9th elder was stunned for a moment and asked anxiously, "Acting sect master, should we send out a message to ask the people of Heart Moon sect, 6 Unity sect, and Pill Tripod sect to come and help?" Ji Tianqing decisively waved his hand and said, "No need, distant water can't put out a nearby fire. There's no time at all. We can only rely on ourselves in this battle. This is a battle of life and death for our sect." The 9th elder no longer hesitated. He hurriedly rushed out of the hall and rushed to Twin Moon Peak. Ji Tianqing was about to leave the hall when Yun Yao and Yen rushed to the gate. The two of them obviously realized that the situation was not good, and their faces were full of worry. "Tianqing. What happened?" "Senior brother Tianqing, I heard the sound of fighting at the foot of the mountain." Ji Tianqing did not have time to explain too much and hurriedly ordered, "Yun Yao, Yen, quickly go and mobilize the inner sect disciples to reinforce Great Peace Peak and Jade Sword Peak." After saying that, he condensed a pair of wings with his Kenshin battle robe and turned into a golden stream of light as he rushed out of the Sky Pillar Hall. He flew into the sky as fast as lightning and rushed to Sky Pillar Peak at his fastest speed. As he flew across the sky, he looked down at the surrounding mountains. He saw that the 4 mountains outside the Sky Pillar sect were besieged by hundreds of experts. The sect masters of the various major sects had condensed wings with their vital essence and stood high in the sky, looking down at the battlefield below. The elders and deacons of the various sects had led thousands of disciples to attack the 4 mountains. Once a mountain was breached, there would be a gap in the Sky Pillar sect's protective array. The experts of the various sects would be able to rush into the Sky Pillar sect and start a massacre. At the foot of each mountain, the protective array lit up with a 5-colored brilliance, condensing into a huge shield of light that enveloped the entire mountain. The experts of the 4 major sects were all waving their swords and sabers with all their might, displaying overwhelming saber light and sword light that fiercely bombarded the protective array. The 5-colored brilliance of vital essence illuminated the sky in a dazzling manner. Boom! 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 Deafening noises reverberated through the mountains. The violent and devastating shockwaves were like layers of 5-colored ripples that constantly spread in all directions. The forest at the foot of the mountains was destroyed into ruins by the shockwaves, revealing large areas of empty space. Chapter 456. The guards and disciples of the Sky Pillar sect were desperately pouring their true essence into the protective mountain array to resist the siege of a large number of experts. However, the total number of experts from the 4 great sects exceeded 3,000, and there were many Origin Core experts among them. The Sky Pillar sect had very few guards, and their strength was very weak. In addition, the power of the 9 dragon spirit veins had been exhausted, and the protective mountain array was extremely weak. It would soon be breached by the 4 great sections. Seeing such a scene, Ji Tianqing's heart was filled with grief and anger, and his entire body burst out with a murderous aura. A moment later, he rushed to the Sky Pillar Peak and arrived at the mountain gate halfway up the mountain. The towering mountain gate was wrapped in a thick 5-colored barrier. This was the protective mountain array. Outside the mountain gate, there were more than 1,000 Tianjin sect disciples, more than 20 deacons, and several elders gathered in a square with a radius of 1,000 meters. The leader was none other than guest elder Huangfu. He commanded 6 elders and 24 deacons to divide the 1,000 disciples into 8 teams and arrange them into the 8 extreme battle array. More than 1,000 people joined forces to perform a powerful joint attack, constantly releasing giant swords of light that were dozens of meters long and fiercely bombarding the protective mountain array. With a series of muffled booms, the protective mountain array was on the verge of collapse, and dense cracks appeared on its surface. Inside the mountain gate, more than a dozen deacons, over 100 guards, and more than 200 disciples of the Sky Pillar sect were pouring their true essence into the protective mountain array to resist the fierce attacks of the Tianjin sect. However, there were too many Tianjin sect disciples. More than 1,000 Tianjian sect disciples joined forces with many deacon elders to perform the 8 extreme battle array. The power of the attack was comparable to that of 3 Heaven Prime experts. Boom! 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 Another 3 earth-shattering explosions burst out, and the protective mountain array was finally bombarded to pieces, revealing countless gaps and holes. Seeing this, guest elder Huangfu's face lit up with excitement and joy. He quickly waved his sword and shouted at the top of his lungs, "Charge! Kill your way into the Sky Pillar sect and leave no one alive." The Tianjian sect elders and deacons also let out excited and wild laughter. They led a large number of disciples through the broken array and into the mountain gate. Charge! Charge! Kill all the bastards from the Sky Pillar sect. Thousands of Tianjian sect disciples rushed into the mountain gate with murderous looks on their faces. They brandished their swords recklessly and started a fierce battle. Guest elder Huangfu and the 6 elders took the lead and instantly sent more than a dozen Sky Pillar sect guards flying. The dozen or so guards who flew out were all covered in blood. If they weren't dead, they were crippled. They fell to the ground and couldn't get up again. The Tianjian sect had 3 times as many people as the Sky Pillar sect. In the blink of an eye, they surrounded the disciples of the Sky Pillar sect and launched a brutal and bloody siege. Swish! Swish! Countless dazzling swordlights rained down on the Sky Pillar sect's crowd. Countless people were minced into pieces by the sword lights on the spot, causing a rain of blood to spray out while they let out heart-wrenching shrill cries as they fell to the ground. Many of the corpses were badly mutilated, and the ground was littered with severed limbs and heads. More than a dozen deacons of the Sky Pillar sect stood at the front of the group, fighting a bloody battle. However, guest elder Huangfu and the several elders were too powerful and forced the deacons to retreat again and again. The Sky Pillar sect's people couldn't resist and were killed until they screamed again and again. They left the ground full of corpses and retreated to the top of the mountain. Ji Tianqing was so angry that his eyes almost popped out of their sockets when he saw the tragic scene of fighting below. Tianjian sect's bastards, you all deserve to die. He angrily roared and descended from the sky into the mountain gate. He immediately rushed into the Tianjian sect's crowd. He held the black dragon sword in his hand and his golden wings turned back into the Kenshin battle robe that draped over his shoulders. At this moment, true essence was surging all over his body and his killing intent was boiling. He was like a peerless god of war. 9 heavens dragon soars. The moment he rushed into the crowd, he brazenly pulled out the black dragon sword and slashed out a 20-meter-long divine dragon sword shadow that swept through the crowd. Bang! With a dull sound, more than 20 Tianjian sect's disciples were engulfed by the sword shadow of the dragon shadow. They were cut in half on the spot and spurted out a rain of blood. The surrounding Tianjian sect's disciples were scared out of their wits, and their faces were full of horror. Several Tianjian sect deacons came to their senses and roared angrily. They brandished their swords and attacked him from all sides. Many profound comprehending realm inner disciples also brandished their swords and slashed out sword shadows that covered the sky and the earth, drowning his figure. Swish, swish, swish. At least 100 sword shadows fell from the sky and enveloped Ji Tianqing like a rain of arrows. Ji Tianqing turned a blind eye to them and didn't even bother to resist. Countless sword shadows slashed at him, but they were blocked by his true essence shield and Kenshin battle robe. They couldn't hurt him at all. He waved the black dragon sword with all his might and slashed out a dozen huge sword shadows that swept across a radius of 20 meters. Bang! 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 All the Tianjian sect's disciples who were swept by the sword shadows screamed and flew backward. Blood and broken limbs rained down from the sky. Even the deacons of the Heavenly Sword sect were forced back repeatedly by the sword light. Their bodies were injured, and bloodstains could be seen on their bodies. Ji Tianqing rampaged through the crowd, brandishing his sword like a madman. He was simply invincible and unstoppable. The Tianjian sect's inner disciples were only in the profound comprehending realm. Even if they desperately besieged him, they couldn't hurt him. However, the sword shadows that he brandished with all his strength slaughtered the Tianjian sect's disciples in batches as if he were chopping melons and vegetables. Xian Yu had already flown out of the 100 treasures brocade pouch and changed back to its original form. Its 10-meter-long giant body was surging with an icy blue brilliance. It flew above the mountain gate and constantly sprinkled ice blades and frost swords all over the sky. It released balls of icy blue light that bombarded the Tianjian sect's disciples. Any Tianjian sect disciple who was hit by its attack was either killed on the spot, seriously injured, or frozen into an ice sculpture. It cooperated with Ji Tianqing very well and actually disrupted the Tianjian sect's formation, forcing the Tianjian sect's disciples to scatter and flee. However, just as Ji Tianqing was about to kill, he suddenly realized that the situation was not good. Guest Elder Huangfu and the 6 Tianjian sect elders had already broken through the Sky Pillar sect's defense and were rushing toward the outer gate with a murderous aura. The outer gate disciples were the most numerous, but their combat power was the weakest. They were only in the true essence realm. Guest Elder Huangfu and the elders were all in the origin core realm. If they were allowed to rush into the outer gate's 3 courtyards and start a massacre, the consequences would be unimaginable. Ji Tianqing no longer cared about fighting the Tianjian sect's disciples. He immediately jumped out of the crowd and turned into a golden light that rushed toward Guest Elder Huangfu and the others. At this time, Han Xiusheng and Du Wu were rushing over with several disciples of the Wind Cloud sect as reinforcements. Chapter 457. Han Xiusheng and Du Wu charged at the front, and when they saw Guest Elder Huangfu and the others pouncing over, they immediately brandished their swords to meet the attack. Bang! Bang! After a wave of muffled bangs, Han Xiusheng and Du Wu were both blasted flying by the sword lights, and they spat out blood as they fell at the edge of the square. Nia Hao and the other Tempest Hall disciples were also covered in wounds from the sword lights, and they were blasted flying while covered in blood. 4 of the disciples were slashed into pieces on the spot by the sword lights, and not even a whole corpse remained. Ji Tianqing recognized those 4 disciples. They were precisely Shi Jingsheng, Wu Lishan, Gu Jianming, and Wei Jinhong. A few months ago, he was still in the Tempest Hall with those 4 people, learning formations and alchemy. But now, those 4 genius disciples were decapitated, and they were instantly killed by the Tianjian sect elders. The lucky survivors, Nia Hao and the other disciples, were also covered in blood and heavily injured. Even the deacon Han Xiusheng, who had once taught him with great care, had one of his arms severed, and he lay miserably in the bushes with injuries. Ji Tianqing's chest exploded with flames of rage, and his eyes gushed with killing intent that was almost blood-red. Bastards of the Tianjian sect! Give me your life! He roared at the top of his lungs and charged towards Guest Elder Huangfu like a bolt of lightning, releasing the ultimate skill of the Flying Star Sword technique. Crimson Dragon Flash. An enormous sword light that was like a divine dragon with rising crimson flames instantly shot out 100 steps away, and it blasted towards Guest Elder Huangfu's back. The elders' faces went grim, and they immediately dodged to the sides. Guest Elder Huangfu was just about to swing his sword towards Han Xiusheng, but when he noticed the Crimson Dragon Flash's attack, it was already too late to dodge. Bang! Amidst a muffled bang, the Crimson Dragon Flash's monstrous flames drowned out Guest Elder Huangfu's figure. Caught off guard, he was blasted flying over 10 meters on the spot by the sword light, and he fell onto the ground in a sorry state, rolling a few times before stopping. Although he was a 9th-level Origin Core stage expert with 100 years of bitter cultivation that was incomparably deep. But Ji Tianqing was also a 9th-level Origin Core stage expert, an invincible existence beneath the Heavenly Origin stage. The might of that sword strike of his was absolutely not something that an Origin Core realm expert could withstand. Guest Elder Huangfu was severely injured at that time. His clothes were tattered, and his hair and beard were burnt black. He was lying on the ground, twitching non-stop. A bloody hole the size of a bowl appeared on his back. Surprisingly, the hole was so big that his internal organs and white bones could be clearly seen. Blood continued to flow out of the hole, and in the blink of an eye, he was dyed in blood. However, even though guest elder Huangfu was seriously injured, he was still fearsome and valiant. He struggled to get up from the ground, his face ferocious as he glared at Ji Tianqing, his eyes spitting out thick flames of anger. Ji Tianqing! You damned little bastard! I'm going to tear you apart! Guest elder Huangfu roared out with a hoarse voice. With the last bit of his strength, he desperately wielded his sword towards Ji Tianqing, thrusting out 36 beams of cold sword light. Heaven's broken shadow. 36 huge beams of sword light that were 8 meters long instantly enveloped Ji Tianqing, sealing off the area within 30 meters of him. Numerous beams of sword light formed a sword array, descending from the sky to suppress Ji Tianqing on the spot, crushing him into pieces. The incomparably violent sword chi actually squeezed the air in this area, completely turning it into a vacuum. The surrounding ancient martial art practitioners who were closer to the scene were all injured by the violent sword aura or were sent flying. This heaven's broken shadow was one of guest elder Huangfu's ultimate sword techniques. He had spent his entire life studying arrays, combining arrays and sword techniques to create this powerful, complex, and mysterious ultimate technique. After guest elder Huangfu displayed the heaven's broken shadow, he had exhausted all of his cultivation. His entire body was like a deflated balloon, collapsing weakly onto the ground. However, his eyes were filled with hatred as he stared at Ji Tianqing. With a ferocious expression, he roared, "Ji Tianqing, your time of death has come. This is the ultimate sword array that I have spent my entire life studying by combining sword techniques and arrays. You are enveloped by the huge sword array. You can't escape from the sword array, nor can you block the attack of the sword light. Only death awaits you." Ha ha ha. Guest elder Huangfu laughed maniacally, as if he could see Ji Tianqing being killed by the sword array and exploding into pieces. However, he had met Ji Tianqing. He had no idea how terrifying Ji Tianqing's true strength was. Ji Tianqing's strength was enough to crush him, and his attainments in array techniques were even better than his. In the face of the huge sword array that was descending from the sky, Ji Tianqing's expression did not change. His eyes were still cold and indifferent. What kind of bullshit sword array is this? I only need one sword to destroy you. Ji Tianqing shouted proudly. As soon as he finished speaking, he activated all of his power and released a 20-meter-long golden sword light, slashing at the huge sword array. Water split. Bam! In the deafening noise, the huge golden sword light, which could split the sky and earth, slashed at the flaw of the sword array. The sword array was smashed into pieces on the spot. The 36 huge swords burst into pieces and splashed in all directions. Guest elder Huangfu's ultimate sword formation was indeed destroyed by Ji Tianqing's sword. Seeing this scene, guest elder Huangfu immediately widened his eyes, revealing a face full of shock. His wild laughter stopped abruptly, as if he had been strangled by someone suddenly. Several elders of the Tianjian sect, who were not far away, were also stunned. They were completely dumbfounded. As the old saying goes, a strong man can defeat 10 skilled men. Ji Tianqing's strength was originally stronger than guest elder Huangfu's, so he could break the sword array with brute force. Moreover, with his attainments in array techniques, he could see through the flaw of the sword array in the blink of an eye. Water flow severance had accurately hit the flaw. How could the sword formation not be broken? The sword array that guest elder Huangfu was so proud of was destroyed so easily. His heart was filled with humiliation. He stared at Ji Tianqing in a daze and roared in disbelief, "How's this possible? How could you destroy my ultimate sword array with a single strike?" Ji Tianqing did not waste his breath on him. His figure flashed and appeared in front of guest elder Huangfu. He held the black dragon sword and slashed fiercely. "Go to hell." "No." Guest elder Huangfu suddenly woke up. He was scared out of his wits when he saw the cold sword light coming at him. He let out a terrified roar. However, the cold sword light from the black dragon sword instantly slashed his throat. Swoosh! His neck was cut off. His head mixed with blood flew into the sky and fell to the ground powerlessly. He still had a terrified expression on his face. His eyes were wide open, filled with unwillingness. However, everything was over. The advisor of the Tianjian sect, Gao Yi's right-hand man, guest elder Huangfu, a 9th-level origin core stage powerhouse, had died just like that. The few Tianjian sect elders were scared out of their wits when they witnessed guest elder Huangfu being easily killed by Ji Tianqing. Their eyes were filled with dense shock. They simply could not believe that Ji Tianqing's strength had actually doubled in a short 4 days. Even guest elder Huangfu, who was at the 9th level of the origin core stage, was killed by him in 2 or 3 moves. Who else could stop him? Wouldn't he be invincible under the heavenly origin stage? After Ji Tianqing killed guest elder Huangfu with a single strike, he turned around without hesitation and pounced towards the few Tianjian sect elders. Thousand Feather Blade. His left palm released 9 sword lights that enveloped an area of 30 meters and ruthlessly killed the few Tianjian sect elders. His right hand waved the black dragon sword and slashed out a few enormous sword lights that charged towards the elders. The 6 Tianjian sect elders were originally brimming with killing intent and high morale. They only wanted to charge into the Sky Pillar sect and start a massacre. But now, they were scared to the point that their faces were pale. They simply did not dare to fight with Ji Tianqing. When they saw Ji Tianqing charging towards them with the black dragon sword in hand, the few elders actually scattered and fled in all directions. Those Tianjian sect deacons and disciples who were unable to escape in time were instantly met with calamity. Swish. 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 The 1,000-feather blade enveloped 4 deacons and over 10 Tianjian sect disciples. In the blink of an eye, they were minced into pieces and became scattered all over the ground. Bang! 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 Several enormous sword lights slashed into the crowd and exploded with oppressive loud sounds. Over 20 Tianjian sect disciples were instantly killed on the spot, causing dust and stone fragments to fill the sky. Even the Tianjian sect elders had fled. The surrounding Tianjian sect disciples were even more terrified to the point that their faces were ashen. They all retreated in panic and fled. At this moment, Ji Tianqing was like a fiendish god of death. Chapter 458. Ji Tianqing's cold eyes swept across the crowd. Wherever he looked, the disciples of the Tianjian sect retreated, not daring to look him in the eye. But at this moment, a figure suddenly flew over the outer sanctum square. This person was wearing a blue robe and had a thin body. It was the Tianjian sect's master, Gao Yi. He condensed a pair of green wings with his true core strength and held a black sword in his hand. He stood in the sky with a cold face and murderous aura. He had been watching the battle from high up in the sky, overlooking the 4 peaks and monitoring the situation of each peak, ready to support the other sects at any time. However, when Ji Tianqing arrived, he killed guest elder Huangfu in a moment. This caused him to be both shocked and aghast, as well as infuriated. Ji Tianqing! You damned little bastard, hand over your life. Gao Yi looked down at Ji Tianqing from above and let out a roar filled with killing intent. Ji Tianqing's expression changed, and he looked up at the sky subconsciously. When he saw Gao Yi, his eyes burned with rage. Gao Yi! You old bastard, you came at the right time. Ji Tianqing roared and condensed a pair of golden wings with his Kenshin battle robe. His figure flashed and flew into the sky. Swoosh! He flew thousands of feet in the sky and stopped 100 meters away from Gao Yi. He stood in the sky and confronted him. Gao Yi! You greedy old bastard! How dare you incite the other 3 sects to besiege our sect? I will take your head today. His face was cold, and his voice was like muffled thunder. His whole body emitted a domineering aura and fighting spirit. Gao Yi frowned and stared at him with hatred. He shouted coldly, Ji Tianqing! You little bastard, you are so arrogant. You actually barged into my heavenly sword sect and started a massacre, mercilessly slaughtering over 100 people from my sect. You even killed 2 elders and several deacons. You evil devil, you are so cruel and bloodthirsty that it makes one's hair stand on end. Today, I will take your life on behalf of Tianqing as a sacrifice for the hundreds of heroic souls of our sect. Ji Tianqing sneered contemptuously, Gao Yi. Stop playing dumb with me. If you hadn't deliberately trapped Yun Yao, how could I have killed my way into the Tianjian sect? What you're doing is just an excuse to declare war on our sect. Gao Yi's scheme was exposed, but he didn't feel embarrassed or ashamed at all. He grinned coldly and said, hee hee. You little bastard are quite smart. You actually saw through my intentions. But, so what if you understand? I've been enduring for decades and plotting for 10 years. I've long since vowed to destroy the Sky Pillar sect and replace it. Today, our 4 great sects have joined forces to suppress the Sky Pillar sect. We want to eradicate the overbearing Sky Pillar sect and return the heavenly stellar region to its former glory. Ji Tianqing saw that he was obviously doing it for his own personal gain, but he still wanted to put on a face as if he was saving the world. He immediately became even more furious. With a cold face, he shouted angrily, Gao Yi. A greedy and stupid bastard like you shouldn't live in this world. You will regret your decision, but I won't give you a chance to repent. Gao Yi looked at him contemptuously and sneered disdainfully, Ji Tianqing, you little bastard, how dare you talk nonsense to me? Are you worthy? Hee hee, where's your master, Chu Tiansheng? Is he still in seclusion to heal his injuries and struggle at death's door? I've already killed my way to his door, but he wants to be a coward and only sent you, a little turtle, to fight me? Ji Tianqing immediately frowned, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. He thought to himself, Gao Yi, this old bastard, how did he know that my master was injured and was in seclusion to heal his injuries? However, Gao Yi didn't allow him to think too much and shouted angrily once again, Ji Tianqing, back then when Chu Tianqing destroyed the divine sword peak, this seat swore that I would definitely annihilate the entire Sky Pillar sect, leaving not even a chicken or dog alive. When you killed your way into my sect and started a massacre, I had already made up my mind to take your head as a sacrifice. After today, the Sky Pillar sect will no longer exist. My Tianjian sect is the overlord of the Tianshan region. And you, little bastard, can go die now. As soon as he finished speaking, Gao Yi held the black sword with both hands and unleashed all of his power. He waved the sword and slashed out a sword light that could split heaven and earth, and attacked Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing's anger and fighting spirit had also accumulated to the peak. His whole body surged with golden light and flames, and his body and the golden light and flames merged into one, forming a giant golden flame sword that was 20 meters long. The giant sword contained a terrifying power, and the golden flames that lingered around it condensed into a giant white tiger phantom. The white tiger phantom stretched out its claws, opened its bloody mouth, and slashed at Gao Yi with an incomparably ferocious killing aura. White tiger sacred sword. Bang! The 2 sword lights that could split heaven and earth collided fiercely, and suddenly exploded with a loud noise that shook the 9 heavens. The invisible sound wave and the terrifying power of the shock wave instantly exploded, and swept half of the Sky Pillar peak. The entire peak trembled and swayed. Many Tianjian sect disciples in the square were shaken to the point that they bled from their 7 orifices and fell to the ground. Gao Yi's sword light collapsed and dissipated. Ji Tianqing's white tiger sacred sword also exploded into millions of light fragments, and scattered in the sky like golden snowflakes. Swoosh! His figure appeared, flapping his golden wings. He appeared in the sky unscathed. Gao Yi saw that he was unscathed, and his pupils shrank. His face was full of disbelief. You actually managed to block my sword strike with 100% of my power? How is this possible? Gao Yi did not dare to believe his eyes. Ji Tianqing was only at the 9th level of the origin core stage. How could he fight him to a draw? He was a heavenly origin stage powerhouse. Just as he was in a daze, Ji Tianqing said in a cold voice, "Gao Yi. When we were in the Tianjian sect, you once heavily injured me with a palm strike. Today, I'll avenge that palm strike. I'll make you pay with your blood." As he spoke, Ji Tianqing stared coldly at Gao Yi and slowly raised his left arm. He activated the sword palace in his body and activated the crimson flame true fire with all his might. Suddenly, his left arm became like magma, and a dazzling flame lit up in his palm. An extremely violent and domineering energy crazily accumulated in his palm, and it contained the power to destroy heaven and earth. Sky-burning palm. Ji Tianqing roared like a thunderclap and slammed his palm toward Gao Yi. Suddenly, an endless amount of crimson flame true fire shot out from his palm and condensed into a giant flaming palm that covered the sky. The giant palm had a radius of 100 meters, and the dazzling flame lit up the entire sky above Atlas Peak red. At that moment, it was as if there was a scorching sun in the sky. The area within a radius of 10 miles was as hot as an oven, and the sky was distorted by the terrifying heat. Seeing this, Gao Yi's expression changed drastically. His eyes were filled with fear, and he could not help but roar in a low voice. "You piece of shit! How can you have the strength of a heavenly origin stage powerhouse?" As he roared, he unleashed all of his power and slammed out a giant 5-colored palm strike. Sky-shattering palm. The 5-colored palm shadow that was as huge as a palace carried the wrath of a heavenly origin stage powerhouse and the power to destroy heaven and earth as it slammed toward Ji Tianqing. Boom! The two giant palms with terrifying power collided with each other, and an earth-shattering explosion spread over dozens of miles. The violent shockwave spread out like a 5-colored ripple, and a raging storm blew up high in the sky. The energy hit the ground below, and many disciples in the square were shaken to the ground. Their faces were pale, and they were bleeding from their 7 orifices. The 5-colored giant palm shattered with a loud bang. It was smashed into pieces by the burning sky palm and exploded. The sky-burning palm was intact, and its power was only reduced by 40%. It hit Gao Yi, who did not have time to dodge. Bang! In the loud explosion, Gao Yi was blown away by the giant flaming palm. He tumbled in the sky and fell into the distance. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.